like maybe like updating, and then when reinstalling stuff on my computer, so I would get a watch screen and it would open and I was kind of Adam, and I constantly have like 10.0, 1.2, 10.0, like 1.1 here, and I just think, you know, it's not working.
So you talking about a stateless function component and explicit return, and he explained to you one of the source what purpose and his response to people. So I just need to buy it. He was going to tell you they were all the same. So it's going to be a DSS. I can't get to it now anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah. Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Yeah. So a lot of children, you know, if you talk about the stating prompts and the data limits and the app, and the app digest, always think of that as like another component of the children. And then, you know, like how to watch for React. There's a lot of that. And they do that because it's cross-functional for the browsers. So you have to take some side roads to explain the bigger picture. It's so amazing. And it explains like why he doesn't use webcam for this tutorial. He uses it might be served, yeah. Yeah. I was, and then, you know, it's like, I put my next to it all day Wednesday. And everybody was getting tested, and I thought, maybe a comment. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. Yeah, so I took all the comments out. Certain things like this, you can never be able to comment that. It's really cool, and it's just amazing. And just like, just general technical things. And how he talks, like, I would know how he was in that.
Oh, you can share them.
I'm down for that. I'm down for that. I know, right? Yeah. Watch the day we're gonna meet him.
Yeah, let's do it. Should we have the offline one?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
At least the one that the ES6 one, I have, I'm pretty sure I have access to it online.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's, I think some of them
For like a short time.
Probably, I told him like we could just schedule for tomorrow night or something. Yeah, I just like it really wasn't feeling it. yesterday and I'm actually kind of glad that we didn't. Because we use those hours to work on. What were you trying to be talking about that? Like, she like the podcast thing?
Fun. You have a good time off? Uh-oh. What happened?
Hey, Fabian.
How are you? I was Collins off. Okay, Canada?
Yeah,
How was it?
I did.
Oh, you mean like over the days off? Yeah.
So literally a vacation. It's like exhausting, right? Oh my gosh, the worst. And then COVID, I think I had one. So it was pretty good. Yeah. My leg came from the day.
Hey, how's it going, buddy?
I was on vacation.
Good. Good. Yeah. Pretty good. How about you? Where'd you go again? Canada. That's right.
Connor, you're staying here?
I'm staying here today.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
No, like I'm like my other children.
It's okay, they're
Make this bigger, so like.
Yeah, and that class was there, no problem. I went to a new class yesterday.
Oh, it was,
It's only one class.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, now,
That's
the next day, my in-laws lived there.
They're probably in there.
How many is it? Oh, really?
But the room is like, it's just,
Smaller. Yeah.
but the other class.
Over this point. Oh, okay, I see. So what happens is that button is bigger than the
They're getting
column.
ready for projects.
You see the green? That column
Well,
is
they're
that,
gonna, well, at the end of
that
June,
width
they'll
is
start
ability
talking about like,
more than direction of this height. It's not cold.
get ready for
Right up
projects,
your-
trying to get an idea, get a head start.
Medium one. So right now you have a
Hopefully.
column.
So
So technically, scroll, yeah.
Drop
Scroll.
straight aside, automatic.
Here?
Here, are you all the way to the top?
Semi-colon insertion, so like when he does them.
Type in here, overflow, nothing.
And that's a little enough for JavaScript.
Hidden.
Why you should follow it. Jonathan, you took your picture? Well, you took your picture?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Should be good.
That's how it's actually, so that's what the columns are. Mine is good, mine can.
All the,
this week I'm not.
Wait, isn't it? Doesn't it usually come on the first?
So you might have to make that.
Okay, I'll check it now.
I checked mine either, hold on. You got things, right?
I'm gonna check it now.
Jonathan, yeah.
8 and then add, so if you subtract 2, add 2 to the new.
You want to get into it, I had to. I wonder what happened to your account.
Complete my resume.
No idea.
That was crazy.
Yeah, ADT has a lot of problems. I have noticed that.
For all the, like, the OT stuff.
So this is gonna be,
Hey, how are you?
like, high school, like.
Yeah.
There we go.
I know.
There we go.
Yeah. That's why
There we
I
go.
ordered mine just posted as
There we
well.
go, look at that. All right.
My last week.
I love it.
That's the way you probably have this full width. Hover over here. Right there.
Yeah,
Okay,
my
that's a what? That's an 8. That's probably a 9. So the only thing that's fitting here is a 1. It's not enough room because you have a 2, so it just moves over. So again, you would have to make that smaller to the back.
You're in a circle.
7, try 7. Right. Yeah, it could be. It's gonna do that thing to push it to the new one. To the next column, push it over.
Yeah, if you want, if you can, just forward me. I'll just do it.
There we go. Okay.
Back to your, see, I like the back of that one more than the back of the other one. Yeah. Well, no, but this one is minimal, but like with the tents. The other one is minimal, but it doesn't look as nice. I like it.
Actually,
But I like both of your fonts. They're both-
I like the simpler one more, actually. This one's just like a line of text. There's like this. The other ones are not just like.
For me, I like how you did your logo in the corner. And then it ties in the color front to back. I think it's very nice.
So maybe if we have to just do it, it would not have to, you know, like, someone happens with that one, let's see how it.
Yeah.
Article to see.
How much of each?
The small stuff. Probably kind of.
Yeah. That's why I'm not even bothering to order you this because I still have a lot of my own pieces.
You know how we get on to
Oh, do try going to purple.com. That should trigger the. I think it's like a site, but it it's triggered. I think you're 3D. Turn that off. Finish it. Force. There we go. There we go.
But it's
Nice. We got the we'll have an event that you have. We have
like the logic word.
I have a solid one, but for my portfolio website, I use Mongo.
That works. I've only got like the front end stuff mapped out in HTML. And then I can that to, yeah. And then I can send that to Apple once I got the Mongo.
Okay, welcome everyone. We're still missing a few people, but we're going to go ahead and get started. How are you guys? How was everyone's holiday weekend?
Not long enough.
Good, not long enough, but good. What did you do, Melvin? You worked and that was your weekend?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
I'm sorry I didn't have a
Anyone else? Funny story from your holiday weekend you'd like to share? What did you do? You slept for 4 hours.
In the middle of the day, yeah, it was fucking amazing.
Why
Nice.
didn't you shoot for 8?
That's long now.
Oh, well, it's a weekend. You had the time.
Madison, what did you do? What part of Florida?
I went to Rainbow River, and I went to Busch Gardens.
You went
Oh,
to
okay.
Busch Gardens too?
Yeah. And then I was like down.
That's my stuff.
Nice.
Look, you didn't go.
Nice. Let's see. Who else? Roberto, what did you do? A lot of relaxing. Okay. Anyone else like to share your holiday weekend? No one? Okay.
That's what inspired you to.
It was freaking awesome, but I don't know.
Okay, well, today we are not going to move on to React yet. As I said, we'll do that next week. We have an extra week to sort of get caught up and review what we did last week with the scraping. Today's lesson is going to be the Saturday lesson from week 18. So we have a little bit of extra material to get through today, but some of it should be review. So hopefully it shouldn't be that big of a deal. So do you guys want to do a little bit of stretching before we get started?
Well, before we do that,
Yes.
is there any reason why we can't sign into the?
I think there are problems with bootcamp spots, so you guys will be excused for today.
I'm able to get in this whole week.
Yeah.
Because you were probably already logged in from like a few hours ago. But it wasn't.
Oh, from this morning when I woke up. I can log you guys in.
Got a notification yesterday telling us to log in, so I'm feeling no class.
Like last night, I couldn't log in either.
Wait, yesterday or Tuesday?
Today. Today's Thursday.
Oh, today's Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Jonathan's spot.
But it told us when to log
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah, but that's just because we didn't have
schedule.
class on
So
Tuesday.
every Tuesday at
Oh, it's
like,
automated, yeah.
yeah, it'll like remind you guys to do that.
I think there's a bug in this program.
Because I forgot to remind you guys. The computer doesn't. So
Okay, so I think we're good on boot camp spot. So you guys want to stretch? Want to skip the stretching for today? Okay, we can skip it. All right, Fabian wants to stretch. Okay, me and Fabian are gonna stretch, and yes. Okay, anyone else for the stretching? Just me and Fabian, Lucas, Jackie. Okay, cool. We got a few people. Yay! All right, stretch the arms up in the air. Inhale, stretch to the right. Exhale. Other side. Grab the elbows.
Well, almost.
Other elbow. Okay, legs. Balance. Yeah, I'm elephant.
right here.
Right there.
Okay.
Or the PTA.
Okay, just shake off the day. Get ready to learn mongoose. Yeah, oh yeah, wrists. That's a good one.
Oh, wow, he quit already? That was fast.
I thought he was doing well. I guess we're scaring everyone away. They hate me. Really? You did that? No, I don't think that was it.
I just
Yeah, I don't know.
I asked a question.
You need no
That has
shoes
to
at all.
work for me in the pipeline.
So
One, Jonathan's coworker, friend, hopefully.
Okay.
That's on my sticky, my stick.
He was.
Yeah.
I won't let him.
So we should have more people for you guys to scare away very soon.
Promotion at the end of this?
It would be nice.
It would be nice.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so are you guys ready to talk about mongoose?
No, we'll do it anyway.
Who knows? Where's Sam today? Is he not coming? Sad.
Traffic was actually quite horrible today.
Yeah, traffic is bad.
Yeah, it took me 20 minutes to move down a mile.
Yeah.
The class feel like empty, right?
Yeah, the class is empty. How many people are we missing? Quite a few.
Not compared to Monday.
Yeah, we're missing Gretel.
4 minutes.
Yeah, we're missing about an hour and a
Yeah, Mike is missing.
So funny.
quarter.
Elliot's here. Okay, so since Sam isn't here, who can tell me what mongoose is?
Type of wild animal. I think it's similar to the meerkat from the Lion King, but then again, I don't actually
Yes.
know much about it.
It's kind of like a, I don't know what it's similar to, kind of like a meerkat or a ferret. Yeah, it's a lot like a ferret, actually. There's a story called Rikki Tikki Tavi by Rudyard Kipling. Have you guys read that? Yeah, it's good. Maybe we should have watched that today.
Yeah, that would have been the honest stuff.
No, we won't do that. So mongoose, in addition to being an animal that hunts cobras in India, is also a JavaScript NPM package that is used to connect with Mongo, much like Mongo.js and some of the other Mongo packages. The difference is it offers additional support. So you can create schemas for your database that work with your data similarly to the way we use SQLize. So it basically provides a bunch of additional structure, which is useful for relational databases and web applications that have more structure. Typically, what NoSQL systems like Mongo are really good for is storing lots and lots and lots of data, but it's not quite as good for structuring things as a relational database like MySQL. So typically what companies would do is they would use MySQL and they'd set up their tables and the relationships between them so that their application could work quickly. If you think of an example like Twitter, Twitter has to give you, when you log in and go to your main page, it has to give you the most recent tweets from all of the people that you follow. So when you think about it, Twitter has millions and millions of users. It would have to go through all of them, figure out which people you follow, get their most recent tweets, then put them all together in order of how recent they are. So that's a pretty big task to have to do just with MySQL. If they had a few thousand users, it would be easy. But to do something on that scale is much harder. So for that reason, what they'll do is they'll use a NoSQL system like Mongo or something even simpler. And they basically just get a stream of everything that happens, and then they're able to aggregate it down and put it into databases in the ways that make sense for them. So basically, long story short, SQL will allow you more structure over your application if you have an application that needs a lot of structure. For example, the app that Sam was working, who else was on Sam's team that worked on the to-do list app? Yamil, who else? Martha? You were right, Mass.
John.
Oh, no, John was. Okay. So, yeah, so that's the type of app that has so much structure that it's better off using MySQL because there are a bunch of many-to-many relationships. However, Mongoose will give you some of that same relational structure, so you'll be able to do some of the same things with your app and still use Mongoose, which is a little bit easier to use. With JavaScript, it goes a little bit more easily with the type of JavaScript syntax. So we're going to be doing a quick warm-up example. I think this is just to sort of get you guys thinking again. We are not going to be using Mongoose for this one. We're just going to be using Mongo.js. How do you guys want to work on this? Do you want to mob? Do you want to work mob? Okay, let's mob. Who wants to drive? Let's get somebody new up here. Chris, want to drive? No? Okay. Okay, no pressure, no pressure. Who else can I pick on? Jackie, want to drive? You haven't driven. You've driven. Yay. Okay, so you can bring up your laptop or you can use this one. Just don't get tangled in that case.
Dear.
It's a Windows. You be okay?
No, I'm a Mac girl forever.
Driving with dog.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, so let's look at the instructions.
Sorry, I'm just getting acclimated.
That's okay. So you're going to want to go to the README. Okay. Your goal is to complete the routes on the server file so the site can display and edit book data. Don't worry about the front end, just use Mongo.js to finish the routes. Okay, so this should be easy. So what's the first thing we're going to do? So I'm going to drive for navigate.
Just 1 second. Okay, go to the server file.
Oh, you guys are gonna have to help me on a Mac, on a PC for that.
Just use the down arrow, please. Or you can do. Okay, so what are we doing?
Okay, we gotta complete the routes. So let's go to Mongo's database.
So we're using Mongo.js for this. We're not using Mongo.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just a warm-up to get us thinking about what we were doing last week. So here, let's read the comments. I don't know if you guys can see them. So it says to do.
Sorry, do
fill in.
you want me to go up?
Yeah, go back up. A little down a little bit, I guess. So to do, fill in each round so that the server performs the proper MongoJS functions for the site to function. So let's take a look. I don't think we have any MongoJS functions. So we do have a DB, we have db.on. If there's an error, it's going to throw an error. So can you come down just a little bit, down arrow, like twice, down arrow, down arrow. So the first one that we have is going to be a submit. We're going to set the book to the request.body, which is the form that we're going to set. We want to save the request body as an object. If we want the object to have a Boolean value of false, we have to do it here. Because the Ajax post will convert it to a string instead of a Boolean. So, okay, so we're going to set book.read to false. So I guess what we're going to want to do here is save some stuff to the database. I don't know what specific. So let's do find all books. That's the easier one to start with. So let's start with that. So could somebody tell her what to do to put in a route here that will go to our Mongo? Get all the books out. I'll get all the records out of our books collection. Or get all the books that are marked as read out of our books collection. What was I saying?
Are you fighting a shark?
Yeah.
Sorry.
What is the name of what?
The collection. What's the name of the collection?
I think it's called books. Yeah, it'll probably say on top if you go.
You want to go back up?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's called, yeah, you're right, it's called books.
Okay,
So then press enter, just go back to the line below where you were before.
Down a little bit
Okay,
more
so
right
within the
there.
curly
Yeah.
brackets, press enter. db.books.
find.
Parentheses. Are we doing that?
No.
No. Dot find.
And read, set the true.
Oops, sorry. I got it up there.
Okay, what's next?
There?
Yeah.
Comma. Function.
All right, pressing in here.
Error.
Hold on a sec.
Right?
Found.
Or we can't call this found, we can just call it data. This is the data that's coming back. We could also call it results, right? Everyone get what this thing does? We're telling it, we're giving it an object of criteria to match. Basically, the read property has to be set to the Boolean value of true. Then we're giving it a callback function to do after it gets the results from the database. And it takes two arguments, the error and the results that come back.
So,
Make sense?
yeah.
Okay, awesome. So what's next?
So if parentheses error, yeah, then outside of parentheses or curly bracket, make a space, push enter, so like break the line. Console.log, and then in the parentheses error.
It keeps moving. Sorry, guys.
That's okay. Yes.
Oops, I'm so sorry.
You're hitting the page up and page down. You're gonna want to just put another line break before the console logs.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, the next line. So what's next? So if there's an error, we're gonna console log the error. Aaron?
Sorry.
I can't hear. No.
There's a JSON, and what argument is this?
Data.
Data. Okay, that looks good. Let's go on to the next. Unread, exactly.
So
Same.
copy and paste, but just change the read to false.
Exactly. Way to go.
Sorry, guys. Oh.
Now, what if we wanted to get fancy here?
What's the copy here?
Control C. You're really on your own.
Yeah, and what's, it's V, is it V?
Yeah,
No,
it's
okay.
Enter Control C. How do you do it on that?
Command.
Yeah, it's the same.
Oh,
only
it didn't do it.
Just pretend the
It's
control
Control-C.
is the
Control.
command.
Yeah, that's all. So we have this. Now, what's the smell here?
It's pretty much the same thing.
It's pretty much the same thing. It's repetitive, right? So what if we wanted to fix this? Jackie, oh my goodness, you broke it.
I did.
Hold the control key and hit Z.
Sorry.
Yay.
See?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, so how could we make this less redundant, repetitive?
Make it, put it into a function.
Break it out into a function. Excellent, Elliot. So how do we do that? What would we call this function?
Post return.
Yeah, or we could call it get results by read.
Or that.
Usually, if you have functions that get data, you'd want to call it get by something. So we don't even have to do this now, but you guys all understand how you would break this out into a function.
Mm-hmm.
What's the one thing that's different between these?
The red true or red.
Yeah, red true
or
and red false.
So when we break it out into a function, we would do what?
We would set that as an argument.
We would
Yeah.
set that as an argument. Everyone see how that works? Okay, we don't have to do this now, I guess. Let's keep going on. So then, mark a book as having been read. So we're going to get a record by its ID, and then we're going to update it, right? So can someone tell us how to do that from our previous examples? How do we select a record by its ID and then update it? Welcome, John.
So it'll be db dot books. Parentheses.
Yep.
So we're going to use db.books as the collection, the update method, then what's the first argument we pass into the update method?
So where?
The criteria,
Yeah, the
right?
selection criteria where.
Yeah,
So we
don't-
put where, tell something.
All right, so put the cursor next to that
Robert,
parenthesis.
do something.
Oh yeah, Robert can do it.
That would be for SQL.
Well,
Yeah.
You're just passing it out?
Yeah, no, it's not where is not for, yeah, so you just pass an object. Does anybody have a previous example where we've used this?
you would curly bracket.
Yeah, so the first thing that it takes is an object. The first argument this update method takes is an object, which is the criteria. So it would be, go ahead and curly brackets. And then what property are we looking for?
I give you the ID, so it's underscore.
Oh yeah. And then
And then it's what, how do we get the ID that's being passed in?
Right. Dot.
Work.params or ID.
REQ.params.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
well, no, doesn't the instruction right there say MongoJS dot object ID?
Oh, that's how you pass it?
Yeah, that's what it gets passed in, but this is it. We're just passing in the ID as a parameter to our HTTP request, and then we're passing it in here. So what we have is fine. Remember what's
How, so it's not this?
Yeah, it's rec.params.id, but it's not what object type, what data type is that? Is a Mongo object ID? Is it a string? Is it a number? What data type is it?
It's
It's its own data type. That's a little bit tricky. In Mongo, they have their own data type reserved for a Mongo ID. Everyone, let's say hi to our visitor.
Oh yeah, so this is our visitor.
Hi guys, I'm Giselle. I'm an admissions advisor for UM. So, I just got a privilege to come out here and just really get to see the value of the program firsthand. So thank you guys for having me here.
Welcome.
Thanks for coming.
Yes, clap. Clap. And then Jonathan's our instructor. And then Jonathan, that's another Jonathan, he's our TA. And then I'm also a TA.
Yeah, that's one.
And then Jackie is our driver today, she's a student.
You guys are doing wonderful things.
Okay, so as I was saying, object IDs are their own data type in Mongo land. So we need to make this, it's getting passed in via the HTTP request as a string, right? A combination of letters and numbers. We need to
I see you.
convert it to its own data type, to the Mongo primitive ID or primary ID data type. So we do this by using what they suggest there, MongoJS.objectID. So we're going to pass in this string of numbers and letters to the object ID method of MongoJS, which will convert it into the Mongo ID data type. Everyone see how that works?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So type MongoJS.
Where? There, Sam?
Or right where the cursor is.
Mm-hmm.
Or you just copy and paste.
MongoJS.
I'm
I
right.
figured it would be easier to do it like this. Object ID with capital camel case. What is that called? Leading camel case?
Yeah,
Yeah.
or
Object ID,
and then
left parenthesis, and then put a right parenthesis on the other side of left parenthesis.
Wait. And where did you, over here?
Not a quote, a left parenthesis.
Oops, sorry.
deleted a P too.
Where did you want the parentheses?
Right where the quote is.
And where's the?
And the other one on the other side, like after ID.
After the D, between the D and the curve.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the next argument that the update method takes after the criteria object?
Setting the read value to true.
Yes, so next we're going to pass in what we want to change.
It
Now,
takes another object.
yeah. Now, does anybody remember, did we use that set operator? Did we have to use the set operator? Or no, I don't think we did.
I don't think we did before, no.
Jonathan, do you remember, did we use the set operator here with MongoJS or?
So we could go, eh?
Okay. Somebody,
Wasn't that important?
What? Yeah, we did.
Another object after that. You meant to put in what you want to.
Yeah, but I didn't know if we used the set operator. No, I don't think we did. No, I don't think we have to do, that was with the other library we were using. So, okay, so what are we gonna do? We're gonna pass in our next argument, right? So
We're gonna-
detail check.
We're gonna put a comma after the right curly bracket. Two steps to your left. Hit the arrow key left twice. Left, yeah. Comma. Another set of curly brackets. We can even.
Yeah, come down to a new line, so come over one. and then-
To start all over here?
Yeah.
Okay. Bless you.
No, I don't think we have underscore for red. No, it's just red.
Red.
So underscores are just for Mongo IDs, for primary keys and for foreign keys. So red, and then what is red gonna be?
It's, no, not.
No?
It's
True or false? It's a Boolean.
So if it's red, if we're marking it as red, are we setting red to true or false? We're setting it to true, right? Okay. So that's that. So what's the third argument that the update method takes? Anyone?
Is that all we need to set?
Who set a function?
Yeah.
Yeah, who said that? Adrian? Good, okay. Now, make the callback function as our last argument, right? We need to do something after we're done updating. Everyone clear on that? So tell her what to do.
Right here?
You have to tell her she's not thinking.
Yeah. After the code break,
I can't hear you. I'm
You
sorry.
said after the curly bracket, right there on that line you're on, after the curly bracket, you're gonna put a comma function. Yeah, you need to put a comma right there.
Okay.
Comma function, then curly brackets. Okay.
inside the parentheses error. Error and anything.
And we need to do anything?
The if else
Error.
error.
Also,
Stop making me laugh.
Sorry. Not really trying. I'm usually terrible at this.
well, you're usually pretty good.
That's what.
Okay, and here we're just gonna response.end, right?
Yeah.
Or 200.
You do need to set read to true, because if you don't do that, it overwrites it.
Yeah, that's.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I wasn't sure what you were asking before, but yeah, you do need to do the set and then read to the school.
So you do need to do set?
Yes, so.
Okay, so yeah, so we're missing one extra thing. Remember how we talked about Mongo operators? So if we don't use set, it will overwrite everything else. So it will, all the other properties that we have will go away. Like if we have a property for the name of the book, that will go away. All the other stuff that we have will go away. So how do we fix this? Does anyone remember?
Line 79 for the curly bracket.
Here?
Yeah, with $sign.
And remember, this has to go inside its own object too. So
And
this is
semicolon.
or colon.
Colon.
Yeah, colon. And then this whole thing gets wrapped in curly brackets. So on the outside of $sign, opening curly bracket and then closing curly bracket right before the comma.
So you could just select the whole thing. and
After
just,
true.
oh my god.
Yeah, comma after true. Right.
Yeah, but I didn't, yep.
And so everyone see how that works. We're passing in, we're going to our db.books, that's the name of our collection, then .update, that's the name of the method that we're using to update. Then this is taking 3 arguments. The first one is our criteria to select the record that we want to operate on. We're doing that by ID. We're creating a new Mongo object ID from the parameter that gets passed in with our HTTP request. Then next, we're setting the material that we want to update. We're doing that using this set MongoDB operator. Some of you may remember on Tuesday, we looked at all of the different operators for MongoDB. So this second argument just allows you to use your choice of any MongoDB operator. There. Then, of course, the third argument is the callback function, which is just going to return the response. Is anything wrong with the response?
We need parentheses after the end.
Can it be read as send?
It could be send or end. So we talked about the difference between send and end. Send can send, you can use more than one send. Sometimes you'll want to send what's called a chunked response, which is like if you know you have a database query that's going to take a long time to run, you might want to just send back the header for your page and then have it wait for something to finish loading and then send back the rest of the page in another chunk so people use that chunk. So send doesn't necessarily end the response. I think that's the only difference, right, Jonathan? Also, yeah, that is the only difference. Also, send, I think, works with, if you set your templating engine, you can use send. We'll send the response to your templating engine, whereas and I'm not sure if it
Yeah, and doesn't.
Yeah, and doesn't work with your templating engine. So if you set up like app.use handlebars, then you will set handlebars to be your templating engine for your app. Then when you do response.send, you pass in the name of the view that you want to use, the name of the HTML template or the handlebars template that you're using, and then the data that you're sending to it. With end, I think it just passes back the data with no template, I believe. I'd have to double check that.
And don't you have to put data in the argument, the parentheses?
No, because we don't really care what the data is. We're just setting it to be true. We're setting red to be true. So we just want to know that we're going to get back a 200 status. If that worked, then we'll know that it worked. Okay, so everyone see how this is working? Any questions at all on this? Now's the time. If anybody has anything on how this is working. You're good? Okay, let's move on to our next thing. Mark unread. Is this repetitive?
Copy,
Yes.
paste,
Yes.
change,
Copy, pasta.
Yeah.
And if we wanted to make this not repetitive, how would we
What is
do
it again? Control, copy?
Break out a function. Control
See,
C.
thank you.
Just like you can.
Yeah. Oh, you don't have a mouse, so she's using the trackpad.
Yeah.
I could have just said she could just write it.
Yeah, I mean, she could. Okay, good. Remember, you're not thinking the check.
Oh, sorry.
Set true false. Very good job.
Good job. Okay, what's next?
Next.
Listen so we forget everything. No, I think there was one at the top that we skipped. What's the
Well, we did skip.
Find out post tomorrow. No, yeah, post it.
Yeah, so submit. So let's take a look at our form, because it's hard to know what information we have to do here without looking at the front, right, the form. So we're gonna go, how do we find the form HTML in our project? If you got this app we've never looked at before, we want to start working on it, and
Let's
we know
open-
somewhere there's a form in the HTML, what folder do we go to?
Let's open public. Public is.
So it's public,
Yep.
In your questions.
And then, index.html.
I was only thinking tonight.
Whoa.
So scroll down because we have a whole bunch of styling and stuff. Okay, that's a form.
Okay, awesome. So what fields does it look like we have in our form here, guys?
It looks like we have a title, an author.
We have a title, an author, and that's it, right?
Yep.
So, and what are these fields going to be called in Mongo, probably?
Title, author, and
Pretty good guesses, pretty
yeah.
good couple guesses, I'd say so. So now we know what we need to get, right? So now we can go back to server.js, and now we know what fields we're going to be looking for in our request.body. What are they? Author and title. So let's go ahead and set these as variables, shall we? That way we know what they are, so someone tell her what to do.
Wait, aren't they already doing?
Yeah, it's going to be request.body, that title. We could just use that. Okay, somebody tell her what to do.
So we're just assuming that book's gonna have an author, property, and the title.
What, the book, the...
As we have it right now, book.
Yeah, we can see that. And so Sam just asked, we're just going to assume that this request.body is going to have these two properties, the author and the title. So we can know that for sure. Can you go back to the index.html? So how do these get named? Anyone know?
Maybe with
Well, it comes from either the ID or the name. Technically, form inputs are supposed to have a name property that's set to title or author. In absence of that, it will default to whatever value is in the ID. So the ID can double for the name. Technically, to be valid HTML, meaning that it passes the HTML validation, which we didn't learn because it's not important, but back when I was learning HTML, we had to make sure all of it was W3C valid, which you guys can look at. It's pretty easy. But anyway, this is fine. So because the IDs are title and author, we know that those properties in the request.body object that comes back to our Express server are going to be title and author. Set there. Everyone see how that works? We set them in the form there. When they come back to our Express server, they're in the request.body object.
Well, wouldn't it depend on what the app is sending, the app.js? Because those are just the IDs of those inputs, but.
Right, so when the form gets submitted, the browser takes that, it takes the names of the fields in the form, and it puts that together into an object, and then posts that object to the server. So that's what I did. Okay, everyone see how that works? When you name your fields in a form, they get sent to the server with those names via the post request. The browser takes all of the fields in your form, it puts together a JavaScript object with all the properties named the same things as your form fields, then it sends that object to the server. You see how that works? So if I name my form fields author and title, it's going to send an object to the server with the properties object. See how that works, guys?
Can we just request
What?
Can you just request the book and not, you don't request everything since you already submitted?
Wait, what do you mean? Just
You said like for the post to request author and title and everything?
Yeah, so we have a field for author and a field for title, right? They're both text inputs. One is called author, one is called title. So then when we can you go to server, Jess?
When you click submit, then it saves that, right?
Yeah, it's going to save everything. Well, it doesn't. The form doesn't go. The form goes to an Express app, right? And an Express app talks to the data. So the form, when we submit the form, it sends it to our Express app here. We're going to send the form's action to the submit route. So you see how this is /submit. That's the route that it's posting to. Go back to the index.html, please, Jackie. So now you see that this form's action is posting to that route. You can't see that here because it's doing it in JavaScript. Can you go to the app.js JavaScript, Jackie?
Yes.
So that was the point that you're making. So you see that it's posting to that /submit. They're doing it in kind of a more complicated way with jQuery. You don't need jQuery to set up a form. All you need to do is set up the action attribute, a few things in between that form will push to the server. So that's sort of a more simplistic way of doing it. But this is all just sort of like meta extra information to help you guys out kind of thing. Okay, so let's go back to server.js. Let's figure out what Jackie has to do to get this awesome app. So we know we're going to want to do what? What are we going to want to do to our database? So we're going to update an existing record, or we're going to add a new record, or we're going to read from an existing record. What kind of action are we doing? Adding. We're writing a new one, right? Okay, and how do we write a new record to MongoDB?
Insert one.
db.insert. What are we missing there? What's she missing?
Oh, db.books.
Yeah, we need the name of the collection. So it's db. The name of the collection, then the thing that we're going to do. So db.books.insert. Okay, so what arguments does our insert method take? Should take 2, right? We don't need a criteria object because we're not selecting. Yeah, so we have 2 things: the object, the new record that we're inserting, and a callback function, right? Those are the 2 arguments that the insert method takes.
Oh.
Right. So yes. Correct.
And now do error.
No.
No.
No. You were close. I think you were on the right track. You don't need the curly brackets. Why don't we need the curly brackets?
Not trying to.
Because we're inserting the whole object, right?
Okay.
The whole object that's in the form is just those 2 things we saw: the title and then the author. So book is going to be, what is book? If we post our form with title and author, just like we saw, what is the book variable?
The rec.body.
Right, but what is rec.body? What is the value of it going to be? Yes?
Request.
It's gonna be a JavaScript object with 2 properties. What are the 2 properties? One is going to be author and one is going to be title. So we're going to insert it into our database just like that.
So author and title?
No. All we need to do there is what? Is book. All we need to do there is book. Because book, the value of book is a JavaScript object with 2 properties, author and title.
Oh.
Their values are going to be the title of the book and the author of the book. So
That
all we need
makes
there is
sense.
book. What's the second argument of our insert function?
Function. There's a different function.
Wait.
That's where
Oh,
No,
yeah.
wait.
my question. I was saying, like,
Yeah, I can tell you're on the right track. You got, yeah, you got confused. Yeah, no, I can see you're on the right track.
Okay, so we need an error. Alright.
Is that Zeta?
If error.
Yeah.
Parentheses.
Oh.
Throw error, or is that, no, we're not doing it.
No, we're not doing error. So you could just do console.log.
Yeah, console.log error.
We don't want to throw because that will stop our app from working. So if this is running in production, that will actually stop it from working. Throw an exception. We just want to log the errors and we'll know what happened, but it won't actually stop anything from working. This is already crashed.
Okay.
Okay, what's the next thing we're going to do, guys? We have the if. What's the other part? Else. Where are you going?
Sorry. I'm going home to get a burger.
Curly bracket, enter, res, dot, and, or do we want to return?
Yeah, is
no,
it?
we don't need, we just need to know that it
Yeah,
worked.
and
We get back. This will give us back our HTTP 200 status.
Okay.
That's all we need to tell us that it worked. So we're good with just this. So do we need anything else? Is this all it's asking for?
Insert inside the parentheses.
Insert? Is that the
Data.
No, we just talked about that. We don't need that because it's going to give, when you do response.end, it gives us an HTTP 200 status. So that's all we care about. We don't care about the response. We just care that the status comes back as 200. That knows that everything on the back end worked okay, that everything in the database okay. So when we know that that happened, then we're good.
We're basically not asking for a receipt.
Yeah. So the other thing is that we could put an error. Technically, if there was an error, we would get back no response from the server, and then it would just time out. And then eventually we get an error, which would work. We could have it give back a error response over HTTP more quickly, and that way we won't have to wait for it to time out. If we wanted to get fancy, we could do it that way. This is all they're asking for here. I think this should be fine. So we should be good, right? Everyone think this will work?
I think it'll work.
Let's try to run it.
Okay, I will leave that to you, dear sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank Aww. Linux isn't so bad. No, that would be a good app. That should be an app.
So we should have called it the burger eater app or whatever it was.
I want a burger right now.
Oh.
I was just gonna
Oh
say.
my god, you got your mind.
I didn't bring anything.
Wow.
You just wanted to tease her.
Just order Big Shack.
Not eating
I mean,
right
we-
Well, then we're gonna order one day.
I always bring food.
I mean, we can order whatever. Yeah, it's called.
I brought burgers I have you find cheese order before.
The issue is like finding someone to pay for it.
Well,
Look this way.
and then it
Everybody look this way.
Don't look this way.
Oh no, we're good.
They have a dollar menu?
The what?
Where is she?
Okay, app is running. So guys, help me test this out. How are we testing this out? Open the browser. Okay.
Go to
Local hosts.
It's relative to
local
another.
host,
3,000.
I love Misha.
Oh, wow.
Okay, good. What's a book title we
Ender's
like?
Game.
Ender's Game?
Yeah.
By who?
Oh shoot, what's his
I don't
know.
Time for a Google search.
Jack.
We have Google people.
I could be wrong. It's Orson.
Orson Scott Card. That's what
Yeah,
it is,
Orson Scott Card.
Why did that?
Orson Scott Card.
That's a
My
hard
favorite
one.
book ever. Orson Scott Card.
Orson?
Okay, so this seems to be not working.
Let's check our terminal to see what's going on.
Yeah, we are checking the console now, waiting for it to come up.
Fail to load.
That's just the fave icon, that's not important.
Yeah.
So what we have to do to debug things, usually we will refresh to get the network tab working. Server. So that's another thing we do when we're debugging. We can check our server console. It looks like it's working. So. Okay, so submit. So let's take a look. We can see that this is pending, but it's not working. So something's going wrong. Yeah, but let's see what's going wrong first. Let's see if we can find the problem.
Maybe there's an error in the app.
Oh, wait, yeah, did you start the database?
Oh, yeah, so we have no database. So this is why it's important to think about all the systems in your app and the way they work together. That way when stuff like this happens. So what's the problem here, guys? Why is it not working? Does everyone understand? My Mongo database is not working, so there's nowhere for it to write the data to. Everyone get that? So to fix this, we'll do what? We'll open up a new tab in the console. And now, anybody know what I use to run my Mongo server in the background? Mongod. Mongod doesn't work because it needs special powers. Everyone see what I'm doing here? Sudo to run as root. I'm going to tell it my password. So it looks like Mongo is already running. Sudo works on Mac, Linux, all Unix-based operating systems. So I can type Mongo, and that shows me that my Mongo server is working. I can Control-C out of here now. So what I will do here is go to Mongo. Do I have to create the collection? Use books. Switch to books. Okay, Control-C. So let's see if this works now. That's right. Okay, Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. Orson Scott Wells.
No, not that.
Oh,
you're confusing him.
I spelled
Without the
that.
E.
Without the E at the end. No, you spelled that right. You
That's
spelled
good.
it right.
Okay.
I
Onion.
stuff for this topic.
Okay, submit. So this did not work yet. Yeah. But this, it looks like this is not coming back with any type of response, so it doesn't actually work. No. So here's why. Because when we have an error, we're console logging the error only to the JavaScript console, though. Get 304. So these are all giving us 304s.
Because they're calling error, not ERROR.
Oh, that should
No. db.books.insert. Response 200. So it looks like it's just sitting here. It's doing nothing. It's pending. Let's try this again. Test. Submit. Let's see what's happening with it. No response.
Explanation help?
No, it's not. It's just telling us that it hasn't finished. The request is not finished. So let's take a look. Let's see what else we're missing. We have MongoJS, app.use, devlogger.
Are we sure app.js is?
Oh, database URL warmup. I don't think we need this. Oh, so there's a new database that it wants to use called warmups. What's the difference between database and what?
A collection is a table within, it's the Mongo equivalent of the table.
Did you hear that? So you have multiple collections per database, multiple databases per server. So collections can talk to each other. You can have multiple collections linked to each other and have them work with each other within one database. You can't really link data between databases, or you can, but it becomes harder. So let's make this new database. And what do we call this again? Warmup. Okay. Now am I going to work?
Yeah.
So something worked. So failed right away. Okay, so now we got a nice big error. First argument must be a string or a buffer. So I don't know if you guys remember this, but the first thing that we do is we look for an error that's actually from a line in our code. In this case, it's giving me server.js line 48. So.
Oh yeah, you put the 200 in apparently that's what.
Yeah, so it doesn't like the 200, so I'll just take this out. I'll restart my server. Then I refresh. Oh, good. And we see that it actually did work. Okay, cultural analysis of Simon Bolivar by me. Yeah. Yeah, for my literature class.
Wow.
Teaching or taking?
Wait, sorry,
Taking.
are you the writer of that book? Or?
No, I'm just claiming it. I'm plagiarizing. I'm plagiarizing on this great academic analysis of Simon Bolivar.
We need to refresh in order to make sure it went through, right?
Wait, what did you say, Madison?
No, what is the heart of coding now? You're not going to reinvent the wheel.
Yes, exactly. I need to apply that to literature now. Just use libraries. Use the.
Yeah, it's like the Lion King was based off of Baseline.
Okay. Okay, so we can see that this is working now, right? Yeah, we do have to refresh the page. It doesn't do that automatically, but we can see that this stuff is all working. So now when I do this, it moves it over here to the red section. I can mark it as unread. Okay, good. Round of applause. Yes. Okay, let's see. What time is it? Okay, so now we are going to introduce Mongoose.
Quick question. Sure. Speaking of hour behind, do you want to do the Mongoose, like introduce, have them do a Mongo break?
Yeah, let's do that. So that way we're solid.
Okay, so.
Or I'll just see how everyone is feeling. I mean, pretty much we've already introduced. I already gave this spiel on it. So how long is this first exercise supposed to be?
You introducing was just 10 minutes, and then
Yeah, I mean, I think we already pretty much did the introduce. So, and then the schema is supposed to be like a partner's thing.
Right, we did the warm up, right?
Yeah, we did the warm up. So this schema example is just to explain sort of what it looks like, and then we have the user schema. Yeah, so we should be able to do this one exercise before we go on break.
Okay.
I think. Otherwise, we can break halfway through, depending people.
Yeah,
how
we can
people
break
are
around
feeling.
8.
Yeah, I think 8 is a good break time. Yeah, I think we got it. Should be
Okay.
good.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Okay, guys, are you ready for what's next? Ready to learn about Mongoose? Yeah, Nelson.
When you have more than one module, how many files do you use for a controller?
When you have more than one model, how many files do you use for your controller? That depends. That's as I said, Express gives you less structure than some MVC frameworks. So some MVC frameworks will prescribe exactly what file structure you want to use if you want to have all of your routes and all of your controller logic in one file or several files. So some people, when they build their Express apps, they'll have one file called routes.js, which will have all of their routes. So that's all their controller logic pretty much goes in that one file. Other people will have a folder called routes where you'll have a separate JS file for each route. So in most of the examples we've seen in class, they've done it actually both ways. For the more complex examples, they've had a routes folder. Sometimes there's just been a routes.js file. So it just depends. You have to use your own judgment. Express doesn't give you a set way to do it, unfortunately. If you want something that has more structure, you could go to another framework for Node.js like Sails. Sails will tell you exactly how you're supposed to structure things into files. Express leaves it more sort of open to you to do it how you think makes sense. But you can always just use the sample code that we've given you as a sort of a boilerplate. My recommendation is make a file for each one. It'll just keep it cleaner, neater.
Are there any performance differences?
It's really negligible. Yeah, really negligible.
Having different files is also good for teamwork, right?
Yes, it is. It is definitely good for teamwork. So let's go ahead and get into talking about this example with Mongoose. First thing that we're going to do is require Mongoose. Then we're going to require our model. So we can take a look at how we can define our schemas in Mongoose, kind of similarly to how we did it with Sequelize. So here... So these are what are called validations. These things you see here are basically just validations. So we're going to set some of the data types in our validation. Now, you don't always have to do this. I don't typically do this when I use Mongoose in my projects, but you can do this. So this is telling us that a string is a string. It's required. Oh, no, these are the fields. Sorry. So they did this in kind of a weird way. They made their example with the field names, the names of the data types they're showing us an example of. So I would have done it with like first name, last name, age, and stuff. So there would actually be like what real data would be like. Here they're naming their field, like this could be first name or something. It's the name of a string, then a number. You could say that it's data type number. Email is data type email. What we're passing in here is the actual JavaScript data type, which is a reserved word in JavaScript. So we just pass that in. The constructor for each of these actually is a constructor. So in JavaScript, just to show you guys how this works. So each of these things like string number is a constructor. So I could do new number 42, and then it will give me the number 42. Or I could do new string hello world, and then it will give me the string hello world. All we're doing here is just passing in the constructor to set the data type for our schema, very similar to what we did with Sequelize. Nothing really new here. But we just set up our schema so that way we have like basically a blueprint for the way the data will be in our app. So we're not just setting it every time in Mongo. We have basically a cookie cutter template that we're using for each document that we're putting into our Mongo document store. And we'll get to look at this again in more detail if it doesn't quite make sense yet. It should. So we're going to tell it. We're going to use promises, which is a feature of Mongoose, gives us a promise library. I think the promise library it's using under the hood is mpromise, if I'm not mistaken. So, and we can take a look at how we're using promises here in a minute. Then we're just going to connect to our Mongo database, very similarly to the other examples we've seen, similar to the SQL examples that we use. We're going to tell it that we're using the Mongo client. Do you know what this does specifically, Jonathan, the use Mongo client? Directive, anyway, we're setting that. I typically don't use that. So now we're just going to create an object containing the dummy data to save to the database. This is just going to be a JavaScript object. It's going to have an array. It's going to have a Boolean. It's going to have a string. Then we're going to do example.create. Example is going to be our model.js, which will link to a collection in Mongo that has this data structure that we're defining in our schema. And the name, sorry.
So this schema is also kind of seeding the database as well.
Yeah, the schema is seeding the database if the data isn't already there. If it is, it doesn't really matter because Mongo is very flexible in that regard. So it doesn't matter if the existing data really matches the schema or not the way that it would in SQL.
So we don't have to go to Mongo within the CLI and create data.
No, there's no CLI tool for this the way there is with Sequelize. It will do everything for you. Mongo is very flexible, so you don't have to worry about a lot of those same things that you do in SQL. So we're calling this example schema. It's a new schema. It's going to, what I wasn't sure on, okay, so we're going to say module.exports example. So I believe that, and we're going to say here, the name of the collection here is example. We're specifying that the name of our model is example, which will match the name of our collection, which is also example. And the schema is going to be this example schema that we've defined here, where the field called Boolean will be a data type Boolean. The field called array will be a data type array. It doesn't really make sense that they name these example fields after the data types that they are. It would have made more sense if they'd used, full name, first name, stuff like that. But that's just what we have to work with here. So we're going to put our first record. Our first record is going to have fields with names matching what's in the schema. The data types are going to match what it says those fields can contain. Like we're saying an array can only contain data type of what? Array, right? So because we have this promises library, I think we're able to use promises here where otherwise we wouldn't be able to. That's what I wasn't. Where are we using?
The Mongoose promise sucks. That's why they override it with the
Wait, Mongoose promise. Oh, they're overriding it with the global one. Gotcha. Okay, so then we're just adding the data to our database. That's pretty much it. Any questions on this? And then we're going to move on to more examples so you guys can get a better idea how this stuff works. Okay, questions? Fabian, question? Or we're just going to move on to more examples so you guys will get to see this. Again, and we're going to mob on this. We may not get through all of this before break, but I think we can do it.
I got a question.
Sure.
Okay, so in this example, where, never mind, I see it. It's in the server.js.
Okay. What was your question, just in case anybody else?
How do you connect this to the actual?
Yeah, everyone see that? Here's where we're connecting to the actual database. We're giving it our MongoDB URI. MongoDB is what? The protocol, right? Every URI starts with a connection protocol, whether it's HTTP, HTTPS, yeah, Martha.
That will be modified when we use PMDB or whatever we use for the
Correct. And you'll have more examples that show you how to set it up with that. You'll have another separate config file where you'll keep everything in the config file, and then you'll add it to the git ignore. So that way your sensitive information like passwords, like the host names for your ClearDB don't go onto GitHub where it's public.
Yeah, but the Heroku database for Mongo just use like an environment variable?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to see some examples of how that works. Yeah, but you're going to use environment variables to pass it in. That's how ClearDB works, and basically all of the services that connect to Heroku, what they do is they connect with Heroku on the back end. They'll set an environment variable for whatever your connection info is, so all of that stuff happens sort of on the behind the scenes where you guys won't see it. Okay, so who wants to drive? Madison, were you raising your hand? It looks a lot like you're raising your hand. Okay. Sam? Okay. All right. Sam, stop it down.
That's annoying. All right.
You can move it down to the desk too.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Cool.
Okay.
Kind of. All right. Okay. What do I do?
Okay, so what are we doing here? This example is called user schema. So the instructions tell us to open the user model.js file and complete the user schema based on the specifications outlined in the file. So we're just going to be writing a schema. We're going to be telling it how the data should be modeled. So we're going to start with what file is that? User model, right?
.js.
User model.js. So we're going to save a reference to the schema constructor. Mongoose.schema equals schema, pretty simple. So now we're going to have our new model called user schema. Typically, you would never put the word schema in your schemas. You just call them like user or something.
So this is the equivalent of a SQLized model.
I don't know why they're not naming anything based on sense.
Maybe they have
Yeah, so typically you would just call this user, not user. Oh, no. So, okay, so this is how they're doing it. They're setting up the user schema, and then they're passing it in to user. So the variable user is going to equal the user schema, and then we're going to use module.export. You guys all remember the module.exports pattern? Like we learned with require.js, so we're going to export user. And then when we require it, we'll require it as user. Yeah, and we'll see examples of how this works. So we're exporting it, and then when we require it, we'll call it user. So the first thing that we want to do here is add 4 entries into our schema. So this database schema is for a database structure that's going to have 4 things. We're going to be saving our username, we're going to be saving a password, we're going to be saving their email, and we're going to be saving the timestamp when their account was created. Does that make sense to everyone? So pretty standard functionality for you. So what data type is the user? It's a string. So how do we make a string? Yeah, so we're going to say one username. So let's refer back to the previous example. If we could refer to server.js for example. Yeah.
Is that it?
Okay, so Boolean. So all we do is we have to type in if there's any restrictions on it, like a restriction on the length, whether or not it's required, whether it should trim, extra white space, things like that. We're going to need it. So the first one is username. It's going to be a string, right? Is it required? Yeah? Okay. So the first thing, we're going to make this a property of this object. We're passing in an object to the schema constructor, right? Everyone see that? And so the first property we're going to give this object is username, right? So type username.
Oh, it's within an entire. Okay, yeah, never mind.
Oh, yeah, type outside of it then.
Yeah, just type at the bottom of it.
Curly brackets, because we're gonna want to give it, so it's saying a string that will be required.
So, hit enter, type. Autocall is a string.
Capitalized.
Homework.
Required.
No.
What?
You put it in parentheses.
Username is required. Yes.
Wait, so we have to pass text in here? I see it two ways.
Wait, no, you can do it, so if you're not, if everything is the defaults, which is that it's not required, not unique, there's no special criteria for it, then you just put the data type, if everything else is the default. If you want to set more things, then you can pass it an object.
So you can either pass it in true, or if you want them to see the error message, then pass it in.
Wait, what are you asking? I thought you were just asking about the data type. Like, you can put username.
Because I see that it can be true, or you could pass in an error message.
That's the string that you get back if it doesn't like match.
Right.
So it's like the error message that you get back.
Yeah,
Like,
so
from
it
the-
knows that if you pass in an error message, then it's true, and that's gonna give you error message.
Okay, yeah, that's.
So required, we're gonna just put username is required.
String is required or
Username is required. Okay, what's next? Password.
Comma.
Open your Facebook to your query.
Yeah.
Copy and paste.
Copy and paste.
Copy and paste what?
The same username from username to the.
Change the username to password.
Yeah, change that to.
Are we gonna trim our password?
Are we gonna do the validation stuff?
Yeah, so, right, so what is it asking for password?
Can you?
Password required,
Yeah,
trimmed, and
wrap
at
it
least,
so that-
at least go to the right a little bit, at least.
So go to view.
Yeah, word
Yeah.
case. That way we don't have to go left.
There it is.
Okay.
Oh, we were reading what was up there.
After.
One
No,
second.
you don't have to unwrap it, you just have to scroll up.
Scroll up.
Getting rid of that thing. The mini map on the right, just giving us more space. All right, what am I doing?
Scroll up. Okay, at least 6 characters. Okay, so how, I think it's just a max, but let's go back to our example.
Minimum?
If you scroll down, they have a thing called long string, and that's what they use.
Okay, so validate input, return input, yeah, so let's do it that way, but let's not do greater than or equals to, let's just do less than 7. Okay, so validate, comma, validate, and this looks like a great place to use an arrow function.
No, square brackets.
You know what?
No, we're using an arrow function.
Is that good?
No, validate has to be an array.
No, yeah, that has to be an array.
Wait, validate?
What has-
Yeah.
Oh, wait, let's go back to our example, sorry.
Oh, it's an array with a.
Validate is an array, and then on the error message, so it's the validation function,
That's weird.
then the error message. I think it's because you can have more than one validation function.
Cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that way you can reuse. So
Like it should be minimum length.
that's okay. Yeah. So sorry. Square brackets.
The thing is that the second element of the array is like an error message.
Yeah. So that's fine. So then we just put comma and then error message.
Comma and the error message. Could be longer than.
We're missing, never mind.
Oh, he did this.
So where's the
6 characters. Okay. So what are we missing? How do we check our
return?
input?
Go back, in the middle of, into your function,
Yeah.
input. I'm sorry, return, I apologize. Return input dot length is, greater or equal,
No greater or equal, just greater.
greater.
Yeah. So get out of the habit of using greater than or equals. Everybody is.
Why is that?
It's just
Because-
bad coding. It's just considered to be bad coding style. It's considered a best practice. Always use greater than and always try to use greater than instead of less than. That way it just
So
makes it a
greater
lot
than
easier
five.
when you're going
When
to
it-
code and when you have to adopt other people's legacy code. It just makes everything a lot easier.
Okay.
Understand that.
Alright.
We try to always use
Is
greater.
that what I heard?
It's typical.
It's greater than 7. It's greater than 5. Yeah. Right.
Greater than 5.
Cool.
Okay. Good. What else do we need there?
It's asking for email,
Okay, email. So how do we validate email?
so
Yeah.
copy,
So we're gonna copy, we're gonna do something pretty similar to what we did with passwords. Somebody else can draft it.
Copy the username is the reason.
So username or password? Password.
Yeah, because we don't need all those stuff in the validation.
No, email we're gonna validate as the email.
Yeah, but it's different.
Is it? No, I think we use a validation.
Yeah, it's just something.
If you do a validation, we do it. Email.
It's not.
Yeah, we could, well, we could use validation.
right, so copy that, Sam, and then go with a comma.
Yeah.
Comma, paste that there, and then you're gonna change password to email.
So there's 2 ways we can do this. In the example, we have another method called, or another property we can give our objects called match, which will match it. In the example, there's a regex. If you go back to our last example, you can see CHS uses that match property, and then it just passes, it just takes a regex and then the error message. So we could do that. Or we could use our function, our validation function, and just use the regex in the function. This way is easier though, so we'll just go ahead and do it this way. Does
Copy
everyone see
paste.
that, how we could do it both ways? So if we wanted to use our function, we could do that too. We could put the regex inside the function. So somebody draft this.
I have a question.
Yes.
Off topic. Is there a regex for curse words? Because I think that's how they.
No, but there are profanity filters, and I think there are even NPM packages that will do that for you.
Oh, okay.
To
I was
different
curious.
degree. I've had to do that myself, so I just got a list of like the top 50 or 100. It's like,
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
We're doing validation. Then maybe it's different.
Can you go back to what?
Okay, guys, so let's keep going. Somebody draft this.
So,
Did you have a question, Martha?
no, I couldn't see.
Okay. Okay, Jack, are you drafting?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so we are on email, is that correct?
Yes, we're on email. We just need to copy over the match functionality.
So are you gonna copy that, Sammy?
Do you want me to do that?
Yes, I'd like for you to copy.
Where should I copy it?
You're going to copy that and you're going to place
Replace-
that on
Replace the
required,
validation.
take required, yeah.
Line 41.
Line 41.
Trim.
Oh.
Paste.
Oh, no, you could just,
Cool.
it's easier if you just like select.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Then remove the requirement and the validate.
Line 42 through 44.
Email is not required. Okay, so we just keep the all that stuff.
And remove the trim.
We're not trimming.
This, you gotta be unique to the
Yeah, we have to say unique to true.
Okay, so we set unique to true, somebody drive and tell them.
That's answer the email.
Yeah.
Before you
No, we have to set unique to true.
Okay, so that's all we had to do, right? User, password, email, is there anything else?
Yeah, for that user created, that's the last.
User created, so the date they were created, this is gonna be a timestamp, right? Okay, so what do we do for a timestamp? What is the field called, first of all?
User created.
User created, so how do we add a new field to our schema? Somebody drive.
That one, the same one? Yes.
Yeah, just like that one.
Early bracket.
And it's just installing the Mongoose package that should pop up so easily.
Type, colon, date, title case. Default colon. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Default colon, date, dot now.
Yep.
Oh, no, now isn't enough.
Now we
I mean, that's it.
Okay, that's it. So let's take a look at what we're doing here. Let's give Sam a hint. Okay, so let's take another look at everything we're going to do here. We can see we defined our user model. When we're defining a model, the first thing that we'll do is we will require Mongoose. You can see that we're already requiring, user schema, server.js. So we are requiring Mongoose, both in the model and on the main server page. This is not the preferred structure to do it with, but we won't get into talking about that now. But typically you don't want to have to request or require things that you're not going to use. But the way we're doing this is fine. So we're going to, in each user model, you will require Mongoose. You set the schema variable to be mongoose.schema. If you wanted to skip this step, you could just do new mongoose.schema here. Does the same thing. You don't really need to do that. So then we just put all of the fields in our schema here. We set up the data types. We set up the constraints, validation, all that good stuff. Then we're going to declare a new variable down here called user. We're going to make it equal a mongoose.model. So the model method of Mongoose as a new model to our data structure, to our schema. The first argument that it takes is what we want to name the model. In this case, we're going to call it user, and we're going to pass in user schema. This is the instance of the schema object that we instantiated here. Everyone see how that works? So once we've added this schema to our Mongoose, Mongoose knows that this is a data structure that we're using in our app. So now we can pass it in data, and it will know what data type automatically it is, so we don't have to explicitly say it every time, because it gets annoying to every time you need to do something with your database, whether you're reading or writing or whatever, having to declare what the data types are, what the constraints are, all of that. So this is the benefit that Mongoose gives us, is that we can just declare all of the constraints, the validation, all of the different things that we need for our data structures in one place, and then it will be persistent throughout our application. Does everybody see how that works? Okay, so what else do we want to look at here? And then we can see, so we're requiring Mongoose again here. We don't really need that. We could have passed Mongoose in. So the way that we could get away from requiring Mongoose in each place is that when we require Mongoose here, and then instead of requiring Mongoose, we would just have Mongoose passed in.
to the function, we would wrap all of this in a function and make the module export the function. So it would be module.exports this function. Yeah, we've seen other examples that use that same pattern. So this would be the way to do it, which is a little bit, saves you a little bit of like memory, or it's the slightly more efficient way to do it, but doesn't really, the benefit of doing it that way is negligible, and it does make things more confusing. So we require Mongoose, we require body parser, the logger, Morgan, all the same Express junk that we've been using. We're going to set our app to equal this instance of Express. Then we're just going to declare this user variable to require our user model. And then we can use user here with all of the Mongoose syntax. So now we can just do user.create. We pass in the request.body. The fields coming in being posted by the form match the fields that are defined here in our schema. So one of the fields in the form is going to be called username. That matches this username here in the schema. So it gets this field here. It says, oh, okay, I'm getting a field called username. So I must have to validate this against username. It must be at least 6 characters. It can't be blank. It can't be already taken. It has to be unique. All that stuff. Everyone see how that works? All this stuff links together. If the field were not called username, if it were just called name or something else, then it wouldn't get put in the database at all because it's not a part of our schema, right? So now only the fields that are in our schema get added to the database. We are using promises here instead of callback functions. So we're going to just chain on the then promise here. And so we say once we add the record to our database, then we're going to give back the JSON response of the new user we added. Or if there's an error, we're going to give back the response of the error in JSON. Everyone see how this works? Any questions on this? Okay, we're going to go on break. We will be back in 20 minutes at 8:18. Yeah, excellent work, everyone. Yeah. Where are you going to eat, Jonathan? Where are you going? Where are you going to eat?
Where am I going?
Yeah.
Chipotle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. Can I have
Where's
it?
the over here?
It's.
Oh, over there. Oh, you leave the campus to go?
Could you?
No, you need to head up US 1. You're missing out on life. I know, me too.
You already know the traffic at 5 comes on here. You work either for too, right? I've never been.
Oh, shit, Maddie, you're gonna go with me? Sorry, so then.
Yeah.
Just getting off the beaches though. Just whatever.
Like
Like
a better movie. Snack. I'm actually getting hungry.
Not at that time. Sometimes on Saturday morning. Getting back on Saturday.
I go to you guys, but I'm trying to be more Anytime you graduate, I'm made up.
Like it only makes sense if you go.
Keep there. There is an app.
You want to watch the plans here.
Like last year,
I'm not sure.
I heard from some kids saying that.
really helpful, yeah.
And when you can have
My cousin day, so she was such a good
for
help. I
inviting
love her.
people
It was only by myself, and then she was a character. I don't know, and then TA, but this is last time now. Having that, I'm like, oh, no,
that's the way
like,
it
hello.
goes.
They use this.
And that's the same thing. Why 15 is based on service. In that case, it's no. To use and
But that could be replaced.
Oh, I heard about it.
I think this year's here. Will be-
Listen, maybe we can take a lunch with that neighborhood. So I actually managed to graduation.
The curriculum is Shantae. You everything else that we yeah, and then we'll get that.
I mean, it looks But it does say it's very busy to travel.
Very long. Was it
Did you see the article on TechCrunch about Trilogy?
No.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
What does it say?
You gotta check it out. Seems like the company's doing really well. Just check it out. Some serious funding right there.
So wait, this just happened?
Well, they wrote the article like earlier today.
Just got the money?
Yeah, 50 million. So I assume they're gonna be across, or we already are.
Yeah, they're already across the country. They already have a pretty big program.
Maybe they've been around too long, 2 years.
I don't know. I don't know. You'd have to ask Siobhan. I think. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's. Yeah. I'll read it later. Thanks for sharing.
Here. Super into that. Like, she works in recruiting. And she says
Would you still not do graduation or?
in the Dominican Republic.
You guys getting ready for final projects? Guys?
Oh, yes. You guys know what you want to build? I think so. That's the ideas going.
Oh, very
You can continue to iterate on your current ideas too. For
Yeah,
these.
build on those. You can pick your own groups this time.
What do you think? But if you iterate on one you already exist, you need to stay with the original theme first. No, I'm not denying you that. I'm just asking if that's the requirement. It's technically public GitHub, so if anything, it just supposed to be begins or one at the beginning and then another. I'm tired. So, like. Just thinking about it. I'm trying to see if I can investigate a special metal project that serves as a tech and it should get to that one.
I want to put so much information.
I don't know if that'd be acceptable.
Yeah. Nobody knows.
Yeah, because long story short,
I saw the template I saw, the original said JS, is kind of what I like.
what I would also be able to create, if I am capable of doing it, is just a tech demo to show guys that run our software systems that, hey, this is what we need in that thing. You guys don't have that now. Put it in it. Yeah, because otherwise I can't make the app and have us do the application.
Okay. Long as we're clean. I guess that's too good for it. Not their message. That's what I did.
I can't even.
So who's where anyway?
You watching a James Bond
Good
film?
show.
No, but it started.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we can make it stand out.
Miami and
Yeah, of course, yes.
like I saw. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, she's very.
Hey Sam, what evenings do you usually do the Nitrox course?
I'm sorry.
What days do you usually do the Nitrox courses?
Usually it's on demand.
Okay.
It's
So when you fill up a class or whatnot.
Yeah, well, me as an instructor, like, they haven't really told me. So I crew for a company, and we have this lead instructor, and basically the only time I ever teach a class for them is when the lead instructor is busy.
Okay.
Which was like once in the past 2 months.
Yeah, so it's usually.
So, if I were to teach a Nitrox course, it would be just a personal one, and that would just be whenever you want to do it.
Cool. So you're allowed to teach just like one person?
Yeah.
And it's usually like a 4-hour course.
Yeah, so.
I have the book, but I haven't started studying or anything just yet.
Yeah, so basically you go over the knowledge review. We cover the answers to the knowledge review in class. I'll probably ask to meet you at some place that does Nitrox just to show you how Nitrox is funded and all that stuff. You also have to do a practical application in analyzing, which is, you have to know. If I'm going to give you a card saying you know how to do it, no, it's no math. You need to know how to use the analyzer. You need to know how to fill out the Nitrox.
I just wanted to give a rundown of the scheduling idea I kind of mentioned to you before. See if it makes any sense. Well,
It depends.
If it would be viable.
It really depends on the dump and everything.
Right.
And there's also,
So, like I said before, just
this
basically
funny article that I saw posted on
my
the
therapy department doesn't have a proper scheduling thing. Okay. So essentially, it would need the
designed to
login
increase your body
It would need
It's designed to increase your safety margin.
a pseudo database per se of patients. So I can't put real client
The guy
information,
was
just
being
text them
sincere.
all.
There's just two different ways of looking at it.
But it'd be
If you decide,
yeah,
I
so it'd
want
be
to
basically
stay
just a
down
list
this
of the census of patients there.
You are, this
There'd
is how I
be
want to
the
stay down.
third-
And that's it.
Is
Yeah.
there a therapist?
Then
Both
your
physical
matrix
therapists,
is
but yeah.
Physical
going to
therapists that are on staff that.
change that. You
Yeah, that
already
would be one
decided
thing
I want to be down to 40
integrated into
minutes.
it.
Okay, I
So
get it, I get it.
what'll happen is
Yeah, well, you
stay
just
down
up
40 minutes, but you will
match the
have
patient.
more no decompression time at the end of it. Versus what most
Because that's
people
not
do.
a lot more detail.
Terrence,
Going in order.
individual, and new one. The most normal thing to do is
Login page,
I'm
list
going
of
to stay
patients.
down either
Like a
like
third page where the session would be the
or
schedule of
like
view.
run out of air.
Um,
Well, not run out, but you.
Close to it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't well,
If
I would
that
want
is
to talk
the
it over
case,
with
then
the
yes,
supervisor,
you're
just like
definitely
get an idea of what she would
your
want, and that way I
So,
can
for
put her on that.
example,
But essentially, it would
For
it
example,
would display
if I
there the
use
patients
the
that
plan
do have a
mode
computer
right
right
now,
now to be seen by our department. Which one of those are meaning they've not been seen prior, which ones are each.
And that's all you would need, you wouldn't need their chart?
Well, that would be additional information that I would want to integrate.
it's the same
And
exact
the purpose of the thing would be more, the scheduling view is the bigger focus to try to
But
demonstrate.
what calendar are you guys
like,
looking
you know,
at?
So as of right now, we don't have an actual software calendar. It just gets stuck being done by hand. When we end up doing that, the software system will automatically generate two lists, and then from there we make variations. Two lists of one that's just the list of patients that have an occupational therapy order, and one that lists of patients that have physical therapy orders. Now, there's some overlap, but the two lists that the system will automatically generate for us.
Okay, and you would want, could you integrate it with that system? Or would you have to?
There would be no way I could integrate with that system.
It's also just.
Well, as far as I know, there's no way to integrate with the system. There's no API or anything I can draw from it. And even if I could, it's still sensitive patient information. And barring those two, I'd have to go with the higher ups and see what it would take to actually get to integrate.
So you'll copy and paste it to this, and you want to check and see if they vote, because sometimes they
Sometimes they vote, and in the morning we try to coordinate so like morning after that day.
Yes.
Makes it easier for the deputies to see them together. They're not required to, but it does make their part of the job easier.
And then, so then what you'd want is you just have a list of the doctors that are on staff.
There's a lot of factors
Like
that
what
go
doctors
into
are on
it.
staff, what
If
they
I'm
need to do
kicking my butt
that
off,
day,
and
drop down next to
teaching,
patient.
then I'm sitting there like this the entire time. In very zen mode and.
You could just want, you know, then you could naturally be a therapist.
Yeah, that's what I primarily use.
Are the time slots the same? Do you have the same time? Like 1 hour session?
Well, that's the thing that either doesn't get explained properly or is something that people that run the software don't want to implement in that manner. Because the thing being is that there's no, this is the inpatient division, not outpatient. For outpatient, you have people driving, customers training for an hour and go home. Inpatient is for all people that are actually admitted to the hospital. So there is no defined hourly schedule as to, okay, patient A will be seen at 8 a.m., patient B will be seen at 8:30. So it's more just, okay, these are the patients under this therapist's name. By the end of today, these patients will be seen by this person.
Right, okay, so you don't really have to schedule a time slot.
Exactly.
You just have to put them on there.
Exactly.
And then
but you can see it.
And then anything else is referred by what?
They would want to refer by, they would want a diagnosis of the patient, so some of them are higher priority basically.
Okay, so you would want like a priority. You can't put their whole chart, obviously. They get the name and then probably the priority.
Yeah, so maybe they have like 3 conditions of note, of which 2 would be immediately relevant to the therapist, and 1 would be the prioritized factor.
Okay. Yeah. What about the ward? Are they in different wards too? Like in the hospital?
Yeah, so there's different floors, each floor taking a different section.
So you need floor, you need priority, whatever. That's basically, that's how they just like that. Floor, priority, level,
and then checking the status of the orders.
And then check off the status.
And then the only other thing immediately jumping to my head is that if any of the patients are on like the 6th floor or up, and they have an order, if they shift anywhere around in those floors, they're fine. But if they end up going down to the 5th floor, which the intensive care units,
then the order
yeah, but the problem being is that the orders don't automatically get canceled in the period software. We as the clinical assistants,
you'll see.
We have to verify the fact.
Okay, you have to verify.
So it automatically cancels the current order they have, and we have to talk to the
Okay. And you have, it's up to you to reach out to the doctor for me to do that, or who does it?
So it's something I can do, but typically it ends up being something the therapist themselves end up going. So like they'll go to the floor because they'll have other patients and you see on the floor and go to the nurses or the doctors themselves if they can. You put the orders. Or they're the other two options are either call the doc or send a message directly to my office.
Got it. So you have like a bunch of complicated kind of business logic, but just start with the simplest one. Start with matching your patients to the doctor, and that's really all it is. You start with that, and then you can probably get into Mongo, and easy, and then you'll add it all. Yeah, so you can do that, definitely do it. Definitely do it. We have to start now.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Can you guys ask everyone else to come in if there's anyone outside?
Because I'm already certified. Like, what I do with yourself.
It's basically the whole
Yeah, thanks.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, no, I'm the first one to do it.
Yeah, I've never seen it do that.
Yeah, it seems to work really well. It seems like everybody's on the same page instead of everyone who's being kind of like, working on their own and stuff. Yeah, this way we know where everyone is.
That was a perfect class. Good. You should bring that back.
Were you on top of it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let them know. Yeah. Awesome.
Or did you just off the
You got the questions for taking back submissions to see submissions. They pre-work stuff. We think about the pre-work should it be mandatory. I'm like,
right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Did you have like an Steve's thing?
Okay, everyone, we are going to go ahead and get started again. So we're just going to keep on moving on through these exercises. Are we missing a lot of people? A few people? A lot.
Melvin, do your thing.
Few people did not show up today, that's true, but that is up to them. Okay, who's driving next? Or do we want to? Bye, Siobhan. Thanks for stopping by.
All right, guys, I'll see you on graduation.
No.
Good job, guys.
Okay.
Thanks, Siobhan.
But where is it? It's on the
Stick around, you might see a crash.
Oh no, I don't want to see that.
Yeah, no, I don't want to see
Send me a flag. I want to know who it is.
Stick around if you need.
Bye. Okay. So, what?
I can't wait for Saturday.
Reacting. Yeah. ES6. We've been learning ES6 this whole time. Arrow functions are ES6. We've been learning lots of ES. Oh. Okay. Yeah, ES6. What else? Generators, string interpolators.
Object literals.
String interpolation. Right side assignment, so you can assign like 3 variables at once. You have generators, you have next.
Constants, let, template strings, object literal, string methods, function generators.
You've been doing your research.
Okay, who wants to drive?
I can do it.
We've already had someone who's never driven. Who has never driven? Okay, Lucas, yay. That's what I'm talking about.
Put your seatbelts on.
Okay, so we're on to the next one. 16. If you on the list. It looks like, so I guess this one is just an example, actually. What they want to show us is how they're using the user models and stuff. So we already pretty much looked over that last app. This is just to show us the sort of finished product from what we were doing last time. But I think we had a pretty good, did anyone have any questions about what we did there? With
Well, it's
schema that we did?
well, this exercise has custom methods, so I would presume that there's some sort of custom method in here somewhere.
No. Let's scroll down and see what it's doing.
There's no read.
What is it? So this is all the same. Oh, okay. So yeah, so we see they have these custom methods, user.coolify or user.makeCool.
Yeah.
So they have different ways that we could do stuff. So can you guys think of any time you would need a custom method on a database model? What if you had a collection of customers and you want a method to say greet customer? So if you had a first name field and a last name field, it'll put it all together and say, hello, so-and-so, so-and-so, hello, John Smith. You know what I mean? So we can have a method that does that. So let's take a look at these custom methods here and see what they do. If you could, Lucas, go to the user model, .js.
Isn't the purpose of a method to do a whole bunch of stuff that that you don't want to rewrite all the time?
Yes.
So couldn't you use that to, like, let's say I had a bunch of customers and there was a certain thing I wanted to do where I needed to, like, set a whole bunch of different pieces of information for that customer to different things.
Yeah.
And I could just make
That's absolutely with the custom. So these are for like custom business logic, like if you had to set a customer, to license divers true, and they're added to this group and blah, blah. So scroll down a little bit. Yeah.
When you speak of business logic, what do you refer to?
Business logic means the logic that you need to do your business. So what was an example of business? Well, give an example from your diving app, Sam.
So the business logic was
The tanks you fill up.
to. It wasn't even specific to diving, but it
No,
was just like,
but okay, so you had groups and then you had tasks. So you had roles. So Sam's business logic was that you had roles and then you had tasks. So you had lists of tasks that could be assigned to a certain role, like you could be the certain
captain.
job. You could be the captain of a ship. So if you're captain, you get assigned this list of tasks. Then you could have a list of tasks that's for captains and first mates or something like that. So the business logic is just all the rules of how he does his business as a diving instructor. So when you're making applications, they have to follow the rules of how you normally do business. He's a back-end instructor, so they need a to-do list that people can do. So he's following the way they normally do business, and he's making his application follow the way they normally do business. Same thing with you,
So like,
Melvin.
for example, the logic was written so that someone who is not a captain can't log a task of captaining a boat. Right? So that's the logic behind it.
Okay. Good question. Everybody clear on what business logic means now? Pretty much. So it's whatever logic your business rules follow. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So to make our custom methods, we just do user schema, which we've declared by making a new instance of the mongoose.schema. Then we do .methods.coolifier. And then here we take this, the contextual this in this case refers to what, guys, in this case? It refers to the current instance of that object, right? So it'll be the current record. So this, we're working on a username collection. So we're going to say, hey, to make the username cooler, we're going to take the username and just add this string ... the coolest to the end of it. So whatever their username is, it'll just add the coolest to the end of it. So now we know that in our business logic to make lots of money, we'll tell people they're cool in their username, and we don't have to want to repeat this. So to do it once everywhere, we can make a custom method. Does everyone see how this works?
So methods is like the Mongoose version of the .prototypes.
Yes, it is similar to .prototype. It's a mechanism Mongoose has to add custom methods, similarly to the way that you do. Everyone see how this is working with the custom methods? Any questions on custom methods? Can we think of some instances, some use cases where you could have used custom methods? Anyone think of an example from your previous projects? Or
The Star Wars game comes to mind, but to give attack functions or something like that to each other.
Yeah, you would give an attack function. That is more the logic part of the application. It isn't really like manipulating data. What about?
Or is there? And those methods goes into the database also.
The methods don't get saved in the database, they just manipulate the data. So the reason this becomes useful is if we have a way that we have to manipulate our data before putting it in the database, and we have to do the same thing every time. So the example they're giving here, if we have to do something to somebody's name every time. Another example, let's say we want to convert, let's say people are entering prices in dollars, and we know that we have to convert it to British pounds every time. We could do a method to go and get the current exchange rate and then convert it. So we would use that. We have it attached to our model, so that way we don't have to repeat ourselves, basically. So this is just one additional bit of functionality that Mongoose gives you that they're showing you that you can use. You guys don't have to use this. I've never really used it. You can always just add the old quick and dirty way of if you want to manipulate a string, you just add the coolest to it before you put it in. That totally works too. This is just another way to do it. Okay, so let's move on. Any more questions on custom methods? Everyone see how that works? You'll get to see sort of how it works in a little bit more detail as we see more examples. So let's open up number 7. Okay, unsolved. Go to user model.js and create custom methods based. So we're going to create a few new custom methods here now. Everyone see that? So we're going to create new custom methods. Once we've made those custom methods, we're going to use them on this file's post request. It's not really a file, it's an app. So let's go to user model and see what methods they want us to create. Let's come down to the bottom. Please, Lucas. Okay, here we go. Define the following custom instance methods here. 1, we're going to want to set full name. we're gonna wanna set the full name property based on the first name and last name. So this is a good example of when you want a custom method. If you have a full name field and you know in your form, they're gonna be entering a first name, they're gonna be entering a last name, and then we're gonna wanna save it in the database as the full name. So we're gonna do what? We're just gonna concatenate those two things together with a space in the middle, right?
Yep.
And we're gonna do this the same way every time, so we can make it a method so that logic is nicely encapsulated. So how do we do this? Does anyone remember?
We're gonna do user schema, title case, under one.
Other one?
Under the, sorry, line 73. User schema, title case. I think it'll be the or whatever. Dot methods dot set full name camel case. Was it equals?
Yeah, equals.
Function. Open close parentheses. You need parentheses.
Nope.
We're not going to put anything in it, but you need parentheses after function. And then the curly brackets. And then we're going to say
This refers to the current record routing, whatever it is, it's not fields, and this dot first name. So it's gonna be first name. First name. Plus what? What's the next thing we're gonna need to add to this string?
plus quote space.
Plus
Quotes with the space in it. Yeah. And then plus this dot box.
And what are we doing with this thing that we're creating?
We're gonna set full name equal to that.
So it's gonna be this dot full name equals that thing, right?
So yeah, so let's put a semicolon, go back to the beginning of the line. Put a semicolon first. Okay. Nope. All right. This dot full name camel case.
This dot full name.
Yep. Equals as well. And then a semicolon at the end of the line. Great.
Okay, that look good to everyone?
Yeah, are you talking?
No, you don't have to return it because we're setting it as a property already. So setting it as a property, I don't think we have to return anything, do we? No. Do we?
Well, let's see what the comment says.
Yeah, let's see.
Do view and word wrap. Please.
Doesn't stay on.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't say it needs to return anything.
Yeah, I think that's fine. So now we're going to do the same thing for last update date. So it's the current users.
Let's copy and paste the last one.
Properties who
Copy and paste line 73 through 75 to there.
Somebody else want to navigate?
Delete set full name.
Eight.
And then this delete full name.
Yes.
Yes. Delete all of that.
Update.
Capital T. Okay. And get rid of it. Okay, yeah, that looks good. Scroll down to the bottom, Lucas. I don't think we need to do anything else, but just making sure.
You have parentheses up there now?
No, you don't, it's a property though. Okay, so let's go to server.js, and then we're just gonna add in these custom methods. So let's scroll down a bit. Okay, stop right here. So then it says send users document to the client. Update the route to run the get full name and get update methods. So we're going to do user dot create, and then we can chain on. Can we go back to the previous example of 16 custom methods? And then just open server.js. I just want to see how they did it there. Scroll down a bit. Okay. Okay, so that's how we're going to do it. So let's go back to that last file we were just at.
You save a reference.
Yeah, so they do it by saving a reference. We could also chain them together, so we don't have to do that, but let's follow what they're doing in the example. So what we're going to do is instead of doing user.create, we're going to have a new variable. Can someone project? Go ahead, guys. Yeah, so we're gonna make a variable called user with a lowercase u. New user. New user. And then we're gonna pass it in.
Yeah, this is a constructor, so it needs parentheses at the end of the
Yeah, it needs parentheses, and I think we pass it in request.body.
Yeah.
No,
REQ dot body.
REQ
Dot body.
Last update.
Okay, and now instead of passing in request.body to create there, what are we going to pass into it? On line 45, what are we changing? Yeah, no, we do.
User.create.
Yeah, user.create takes lowercase user.
No. That stays there. Inside.
No, the
inside the
rec.body
parentheses,
there
yeah.
is lowercase user.
Why? Because we made a new user. So we're giving user the request.body up there, and then that makes a new user, and then we tell it to go do those two things. It's going to make the full name state there, and then we're just going to tell it to create it, so it actually puts it in. Okay, that should be all we need to do for this exercise. We want to try to run it. Okay, so Lucas, go to the console. It's the thing there to the right where it says UCF at the bottom. Yeah, either one of those is fine. Okay, so hit Control-C to quit out of this. And then you're going to go to, so cd .. cd space .. 17 tab. Okay, and then unsolved U. Okay, CD capital U, no capital U, capital U tab. You can tab to autocomplete. Okay, enter. And then you're doing npm I. And if anyone else wants to navigate.
No, you're good. Keep going.
I'll just do it. Why don't I do everything for you guys? Why don't I do your projects for you too?
Which you
Like, just starting out the framework, we can fill in the blanks.
And he can even come with you to your job and do that too.
When I interview
Right?
for my dream job.
Yeah.
By the way, my instructor comes as a package deal, and he's gonna help you with all of this.
Phone your friend, phone your friend.
And then you're gonna get confused by what he's saying.
Yeah, like examples.
I'm talking his driving.
Not like a spy agent or anything. Forget every spy movie.
That is impossible, that big fun, that big boy.
Okay, so yeah, no,
How was that burger, Sammy?
It's delicious.
Thanks a lot.
But you didn't get fries, did you?
Yeah, exactly.
no, that would be like.
Yeah.
That's my religion. No kosher.
Okay, so let's try to just fill this out like a first name, last name.
You thought it.
Goku. This is last name. Yeah, there we go. Password is gonna be
Yeah, that's you on Saturday.
Something simple.
password.
Hello.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's a very important.
Okay, let's try it
It's the
out.
same that I have in my
Okay, yeah, it worked.
Oh,
Error.
No, it's giving us a bunch of errors.
No, that's what I said. I said, oh.
Okay, so what happened? Cast to date failed for value. Okay, so let's see if we can see what happened here. Can you go to the console, to the terminal? No, on the bottom, the node server where we're running the node server. Yeah. Okay, so it didn't give us an error. So it's saying it failed to cast something to a string value, date. Okay, let's go back to our code.
Where is it?
Something to do
No,
with
that's the wrong one. Yeah, so I think it has something to do with the way that we're creating.
So let's look at the model.
So yeah, so let's go to the model instead, the user model. Just last updated is, let's try doing this instead. Let's try making it new date. Let's just try making it new date.
And instead of dot now, parentheses.
Yeah, so new space date and then just put empty parentheses. Yeah, because what it needs is.
Like that?
No, I think it needs a date object. See, date.now gives you back seconds since 1970. So that's a number. What it wants is something that's a date object. Does it want the number of seconds since 1970? Oh, since last updated. No, it's just
wait
the
a second.
timestamp.
Yeah.
Let's try it like this. I think this will work.
They do specifically say date dot now.
Yeah, they do.
We go back to the thing.
Return this,
They say date dot now parentheses.
Date dot, oh, so it's a method, but a date is fine. Just a date.
Yeah, that should do it as well.
Yeah.
Just create a new one.
Yeah, they are, they like Moment.js. So let's try this again. Go back.
I like Moment.
Yeah, but it's good to learn how to do that stuff too.
It
Okay,
works.
so let's go back to localhost 3000.
It worked.
Okay, but go back. Go back.
Go back.
Back.
Regress R.
Okay. So now let's try to submit it again. Let's just try it again. Try to get some Okay, good. So it works now.
Yay! Oh, it gave us a duplicate key.
Yeah.
Because we already submitted it.
Yeah.
Because the last time we did it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's fine. So it's working.
Yay.
He's back. He brought all of us tacos. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. You good to keep driving?
I didn't even know he left.
I'll get someone else.
Okay, someone else. Okay. And we're just gonna keep going here. I think we are almost done. How are you guys feeling? Do you kind of understand what we're doing here in terms of Mongoose? Do you see how Mongoose is useful? You seem to be doing pretty well, man. You get it. All right, Russ.
Is it possible to save an object that's not like a string, Mongoose or Mongoose?
So you mean like you're creating a totally new object, your own type of object? No, it's not. If it inherits from anything that isn't in Mongo, you can't do it. Like if you have some object and you make something a prototype of it, no, you can't. It has to be a predefined data type in Mongo, which is pretty much, it has to be like an object ID, a date, or the 5 primitive data types. There's not really much else that it can be. Good question though. Yeah.
If you leave one of these fields blank, what would save in the database?
If you leave it blank, nothing happens. If it's not required and you leave it blank, nothing happens. If it is required and you leave it blank, then it will throw an error because it will say, hey, this field has to be there in order to create a record. In order to create a new user, we need a username and a password. You don't have both those things, it won't let you create the record. So it depends whether or not it's required. Good question. Any other questions? How do you guys feel about this? Is it making sense? You see why it's useful to have a schema so that way your data is structured the same way every time. That way you can just pass in an object. It'll automatically go to the right fields. You'll have the right structure. You'll have the right validations. You'll have, what else does Mongoose allow you to do? Structure, validation, custom methods. What else? Pattern matching as well as validations. You can do pattern matching, which is similar but not the same as we saw. So it gives you both those things. You can either match a regex or you can have a custom validation function. You can add the custom methods. You can do all kinds of fun stuff.
So it provides more order.
Precisely. It provides more order than the regular Mongo stuff, which will come in handy. It will drive you crazy having to write all of the Mongo code for each time. If you know your data is structured in a certain way, it's very easy to just make a schema and then it handles a lot of the stuff for you. So this is actually a really good way to make our apps. This is probably the one easiest way to make Node.js apps is with Mongo and Mongoose like this. It's easier than SQL, easier than writing Mongo by hand. Yeah, it is. And there's a reason that's why we go to this last. So you'll understand SQL, you'll understand all the challenges, and then you'll understand how this makes it easier for you.
But there's no benefits to MySQL.
There are a lot of benefits to MySQL. It gives you more structure. For a lot of apps, MySQL is pretty much the standard. Like WordPress is a great example of an app that will always use MySQL or Postgres or some kind of SQL system. It would be really, really hard to make a system like WordPress using Mongo. Although not impossible, and people have done it, but there's so much functionality in terms of the way the tables relate together that it makes a lot more sense for them to stay using SQL. The reason NoSQL became popular is because it scales up a lot better. It's a lot easier to run in a clustered environment where you have many, many, many virtual machines that are all part of the same server. That's one reason it's also a lot easier to crunch numbers, to aggregate data with Mongo. You can do that across much larger data sets much more quickly. Then people started using it for web apps, using Mongo and using different things like that because it just lends itself easily to the type of data structures that we use in JavaScript. So it sort of works easily that way. But that's not really what the NoSQL systems were for. That's sort of like as an afterthought, people realized, oh yeah, we can use Mongo with Node.js apps and it will make sense because it's all JavaScript.
So for your apps, I'd say for your next projects, use Mongo. It should do pretty much everything that you guys need it to. And are you going to do the same app, Sam, or something different for your next project?
Probably something different.
Yeah, of course. We have final group projects. Yeah.
Probably something different.
Probably something different. Okay. Yeah. So I'd say all of you guys use Mongo for most of the projects you do for the near future. Mongo should be fine.
Do you have any? Are you requesting that I do the same?
No, I was just wondering because I was thinking about how this database structure would work in Mongo. Okay, so you guys ready for what's next? We have like 2 more exercises. So this next one is going to be populating data into Mongo. This is just one that we'll go over together. This is showing us how we populate stuff. So we're going to make a new collection called library. And this is going to create a new record in it. Sorry, I'm just looking over this, trying to figure out. Populate books. So it looks like we made a custom method called populate. Now you see here, you see how this project is structured differently than the other projects. Our other projects have had our schema file in the root. This one has a special models folder where we put our schema model because we have 3 different models. We have an index model, which just basically exports the other 2. And then we have one for library, one for book. Why did they do it this way? Because this way we can just require this whole models folder and we get both of our models. So you can see that here we are requiring, somewhere we're going to be requiring models. Sorry. Oh yeah, DB is going to equal models. So then we can do db.book or db.library or whatever, and it's just going to export that object. So now we can do db.book, db.library. Does that make sense to everyone how they structured the project that way? So then we give it a populate method. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up on how all of this stuff is working. How does the populate method work, Jonathan?
Where's the
app.get populated library db.library.find. So this gets back all the records out of the library collection. Then we're doing a method called populate. Specify that we want to populate the retrieved libraries with any associated books.
Oh, populate is built into Mongoose.
What does it do though? So let's look at this. A good way to do this when we run into stuff like that is we just go to the docs and look it up. So somebody, all of you guys go look up Mongoose docs populate. Populate MongoDB has the join like lookup aggregation operator. So in MySQL, we do joins. Who remembers what joins do in SQL? Anyone? Connects 2 tables together. Like for instance, we could have a table for authors and then a table for articles. And then the authors are associated with the articles in a one-to-many relationship, right? So one author can be associated with many articles. Each article is only written by one author. So that's a one-to-many relationship, right? Going from authors to articles. So what you could do is if you wanted to know all the articles a given author had written, you would do a join from authors to articles. So basically what you would be doing under the hood is you would be selecting everything from the articles table where the author ID field equals a given thing. So I'm Jonathan Fields. My ID in the author table is going to be 42, let's say. So then I go to my articles table and I select every record that has an author ID field that equals 42, my author ID, right? So that's how we're doing the join. So this does a similar type of thing. If the collections are associated with each other, meaning that if it has a foreign key, so we have a collection of books and a collection of libraries. So we can say that a given book belongs to a given if we go to the model, so the book only has these two fields, author and string, so I don't see how it would be associated with the library. The library name is unique. Okay, so here's how this works. Each library has two fields. It has one that's the name of the library, like it could be Coral Gables Library or something. And then it has another property that's an array called books. That's an array. So, and here we can define in our schema that something is an array of a certain data type. So now in our schema, we're saying that the books is an array, and it's going to be an array of schema.types.object_id. So it's going to be an array of object IDs. These object IDs are foreign keys to what? To books in the book collection, right? Is everyone with me so far? Everyone see how this is working? Okay, good. So then this should populate. So how will it join then? I don't understand what they want us to do here. So.
You want us to do that? We didn't get that far yesterday. So
oh, okay. Okay. Can you guys see in the lesson plan right now? Work. Okay, so we're trying to figure out how this populate thing works. The thing that I'm confused about is there's no data in there. So like I could.
Oh, I'm on 18. I'm on phone.
Yeah, that's where he is.
Oh, so what populating thing are we talking about?
That's what we're trying to figure out.
So it looks like
It's combining collections.
Yeah.
It lets you
It's
reference
just
other collections in the
populations
document.
right. So it lets you reference, but how do we populate the data that's in the database? That's what I don't understand. So we can test it. Okay, so let's run this, and I think we'll have a better idea of how it works, maybe.
Oh, I think it like automatically generates an ID and then it associates it with the.
Okay, so we're just gonna run this, and we're gonna check out how it works, and then we'll see how it works.
The instructions of what to do. Open that, to that, and that'll.
Okay, so just save a book. Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's see. C ////18. Okay, sorry everyone for the confusion.
We're always confused. That's our secret.
Except for now, I'm confused as to what we're confused about.
Oh,
Confused.
I wasn't sure how to where the demo data for this example was going to come from. That's what I was confused about. But we're just supposed to enter books, and then they'll automatically get associated with the libraries, and we'll see how this works. So the idea of what this populate thing does is if we go back to the schema, you'll see that I have this books thing that's an array of object IDs. So what this does is it automatically gets all the data. So instead of this just being an array of object IDs, it'll be an array of records about the books where we get the author name, the title, all that good stuff.
Yeah, instead of having like two split collections, it's one.
Yeah, so it basically does the same thing as what I was talking about with the join, where it joins together the two collections. Node server.js. And then we just do this. Okay, what's another book you guys like? Outliers. Who wrote that? It's a novel? Okay. Okay, so now it's showing me the data. So now what's the next thing in the instructions there?
Just to go look at the library, I'm sorry, the books collection.
In
the database.
In the database?
Yeah, to take a look at it, like the actual, you'll find on the.
Okay. The books collection. Okay.
Oh no, I'm just kidding. They have a route for that. They have a route. So it's
yeah, I thought.
Books.
/ books.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
You see your book right there, and then if you go to / library.
Right. So then it's gonna relate all this stuff. Library.
Right, but if you want to see everything together, then you would use / populated, and that would.
Okay. Is everyone seeing how this is working? So I have my books, my library, and then if I do / populated, then it joins everything together. And then we're going to get a chance to play with this on our own. So if I do / populated, instead of just giving me the array of unique IDs, it also gives me the author and title of the book as well. So you see here, it just gives me the array of unique IDs. Here it gives me an array of objects that has the unique ID, the author, and the title all together. So it brings everything together from the different collections. Everyone see how that works? It's joining all this stuff together. So for instance, if, well, we're going to get to do a whole nother example where we get to practice this exact same thing. So I won't go into it too much, and hopefully by the end of the example we'll understand it. If not, we can answer more questions. Who wants to drive? Wait, what was the question?
No, nothing.
Okay. Okay, who wants to drive? Lauren? No.
I got a lot from paying attention to it.
Okay. Okay, who else? Who else hasn't gone? Melvin, you've gone already. Okay, go ahead. Nelson. Nelson is the race car driver.
Game first or last.
Game first or last. Take the bike. Okay, so we're on number 19. So if you scroll down, Nelson, and the side panel thing there on the left, we're at number 19.
On the left, in the left.
Yeah, type close all. Go to file and then close all.
Just do that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, file, close all.
I don't see it.
Close all files. Okay, so then, yeah, 19, open the README. We're going to be doing the exact same thing here, guys. We're just going to be populating.
I think Jackie wants us to open this all.
Yeah, she always tries to get us. I mean, you guys get the solved
Listen, I'm
exercises.
big word, y'all, so don't pick up y'all. Damn right.
It's not like there's some type of trade secret. You guys can have the solved exercises if you want.
What?
I said
Trade
trade
secret.
secret.
Get your mind out of the gutter.
Really, Zach?
Wait, why is lingerie in the gutter, Sam?
Because you're next to it at the window.
Wow, you put your foot in the mouth.
We're sorry, Nelson.
Okay, sorry, Nelson. Okay, let's go back. Let's concentrate. Open server.js and update the /populate route to return the users populated with nodes populated with the nodes as JSON to the client. So let's take a look at what we're doing here first in this app. It looks like we have users, and then we're going to add nodes to the users. We don't have it yet. They have populated users.
Oh, we have populated.
Yeah.
So where do I start?
I'm not sure because I'm not looking at it. Okay.
Okay, guys, somebody dive, somebody step into your power, step into your leadership.
Also look at clear DB.
Yeah, you will have to use it for your Mongo Lab is one I think.
Mongo Lab?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Do we still have to do it down to the bottom?
Yeah, you have to do all that stuff, it says an environment.
So that's
Yeah. We should have some good examples for you.
That's different from Jaws because Jaws is a sequel.
Jaws and Pretty Bear sequel is Mongo Lab. Okay, guys, let's focus.
Write the query to grab the documents from the user collection and populate them with any associated notes.
Okay, so what I think is happening here is we have a users collection. The users can get notes that go with them, kind of like if you're like a customer service representative and you say, okay, this user called about this thing on Tuesday, they blah, blah, so we can associate the notes. So we have one collection for notes, one collection of users. We need to associate the notes with users. What kind of a relationship is that? Many to many, one to many, one to one. What is
That's a one to many.
one to many, many nodes to one user, right?
Yes.
Everyone get that chart?
Many users to one node.
No,
Many nodes.
the opposite of that.
Yeah.
One user can have many notes.
Many nodes in one.
Oh, okay, so many nodes.
Each node is specific to one user.
You get all that?
So, okay, so let's take a look, if you could please.
It says,
Nelson,
for
come
the
to-
tip, check the models out to see.
Yeah,
how the
right,
notes-
that's what I was about to suggest. So let's go to models, let's see what our models are. We have a notes model and a users model. So let's go to notes. The notes just have a title and a body. And then the user, if we go to user, it should have a property called nodes, which is going to be an array. So we can define our schema of arrays like this. We can say we'll have an array, but the only thing that's allowed in this array is things of the type object ID. So if I try to put a number in this array, what will happen? It will throw an error, right? If I try to put a string in this array, it'll throw an error. If I try to put a date in the array, it'll throw an error. Anything but a Mongo ID, it will throw an error.
And ref refers to the models, right?
Ref, where do you see that?
This type, it's an object.
Oh yeah,
and-
reference is no. Ref refers to the model that it's referencing. So we know what's going on here now. So we just need to populate the notes. So let's take a look at the method that they have. Above that should be just regular user without the populate.
So does Mongo have like built-in one-to-many and one-to-one stuff? Or?
No, it doesn't have any of that stuff.
Okay.
Okay, guys, so you see what's happening here. So populated users. So we're basically just going to copy what we did on the last example. So submit, let's go up one more, Nelson, see if there's one that just gets all the records. Go up. User, okay, so this is going to be pretty much the same as user, only we're going to be using the populate method the same way as we did in our previous example. So somebody take a look at the example and tell us what to do.
Oh, we still have these.
Okay, at the end of line 96 plus enter.
Yes, it's our user.
Uppercase U.
Uppercase. Fine, right? I got all of them.
And curly brackets.
Curly brackets. It's empty, right?
Yep. Oh, okay, I thought you were just going to continue. Sorry. And then exit out of that and press enter. Populate.
And we pass in what? The name of the model that we're joining with, right?
Yeah, no.
So no.
A quotation. Yeah. No.
Capital N.
Or no, pardon, not no.
No, with a capital N, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just like that.
Okay, and then what's next? Ben? Ben? Then, so this returns a promise. We're chaining on the then method to it to add that promise, we can be using callback functions too, the way that we did in these previous examples, but promises give us more control, right, over when we execute stuff. So for example, if we had 2 database queries that we wanted to do at once before we had the callback function, we could use promises for that. If you, so say you have 2, say you want to look up something from one collection, like users, and then there's another collection like notes, so say you have to look up 2 different things, and then you want to do something when they're both done. You could use promises for that.
Oh, sorry, no, it's populate notes, lowercase n, plural. Sorry.
Lowercase n.
Oh, because that's the name of the property of the user, right?
Yeah, so add an S to the end of note. So that's because that's the property on user.
Yeah, I was mistaken between the name of the file and
the name of the file.
Yeah, function, and we can do that as an arrow function, right? And I'd like to see, just as a note, I know we don't have this in the examples, but for all the node code you guys are running from now on, maybe start doing all like arrow functions just as a best practice. Or when it makes sense.
It's kind of, I think the only reason you would want to do a
oh, you don't need double.
It's also for consistency. There, I mean, the scoping is slightly different, but it's mostly
that's
just
what
for
you're doing.
consistency's sake. It's good to do everything.
The only thing I find like BigQuery has some issues with it.
Yeah, don't do it on the front end yet, because there's some problems with it, but definitely on the back end.
Oh, well, that's the scoping problem. That is already that, yeah.
Or put
Well, no,
in the
yes,
parentheses.
You can't use this.
You can't use this when you would expect to use this.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get back to what we're doing here then. So we have our callback function. Callback function takes what? The error and the data, right?
Yeah. Error, comma, data.
Those 2 arguments, the error and the data. Then we're
If error.
If there's an error, we console log the error. Otherwise, we give back the data in our HTTP logs.
I noticed that in some of the examples when they do like if error, throw error, console log error, whatever, and they don't put curly brackets, would you recommend it?
As what?
I would recommend against that. Yeah. Yeah. That should be all we need to do.
Would you recommend when we have, I mean, I guess this is splitting hairs, but if we have a route that returns data, should we always name it like data or something, be consistent with that, or should we name it like what we're expecting to get back?
What you're expecting.
So in this case,
Yeah, be as specific as you can.
in this case, it would be error, comma, notes.
Yeah, you can call it results or you can call it notes. The problem with calling it notes is it's easy to get confused between the schemas and the results that you're getting back. So I would call it results or data. Okay. Okay, I think we're good. Let's try to run this if you could please, Nelson. So just go.
Oh, do we need a semicolon after the dot net or is that
Wait,
not?
sorry, go back, Nelson, so I can see what he's talking about.
Line 105.
Yeah, 105. Do we need a semicolon there?
Technically, it's good to have here. Oh, thanks for pointing that out. Have any of you tried using JS Things yet?
No, yeah.
Okay, I recommend it to all of you.
They actually tell you to take out the semicolon.
Oh, will it? Oh, God.
I don't even have a list.
Isn't a semicolon just like
Where's
this
the?
line is separate, and
Yeah.
so if it's the last line, then you don't need it.
Yeah, it'll tell you not to put semicolons where they're not needed.
Where's the shell here?
Oh, yeah, you told us about.
Oh, right here.
Okay, so we're running our server. Yeah, are we in the right folder?
No, it's 19, right?
We're on 19. So
Okay.
cd ///.
Wait, do we need to go up 2 levels?
No, yeah, 2. Oh, no, 1, because we weren't in a solve.
Yeah.
So then 19, just type 19 cap. And unsolved, enter. Yeah. And then npm I.
We should use not.
I think that. Oh, no.
I'll have cheat
Cheeseburgers, yeah. They're delicious.
You almost say that like Homer does with donuts, like, cheeseburger.
You always remind me of that guy from Popeye.
I think I stopped the server.
Donuts, kids.
Good. Oh, yeah. Don't remember.
Do you have the server running the other tab? I think I stopped the Mongo server.
No, that's okay. Just go up one more. Go to no server chance.
No, because
Yeah, no, I don't think you stopped Mongo. Don't worry about it.
it's running.
Now it's stopped.
No?
Sorry.
Would it be asking for it?
Yeah, that's the Mongo client. That's one thing.
All I know is that.
Okay, so we should be good. Let's go to the browser. Local to the browser. Is the server running?
That's what I don't know.
Go back to the server. Yeah, there. Okay, so just type start node server chance.
Wait,
That's fine. Just node server chance.
But we're in 18. Oh, just kidding. Wait a second. What is it? Oh, that's week 18. Never mind.
Okay.
Just getting something.
It's funny.
Okay, let's go to localhost. Okay, so hi user.
Okay. 531.
No, we're listening.
What do around here?
I have a lot of cats.
I have what?
It's a great note.
For Ernest Hemingway. Isn't he famous for like the 6-foot cats?
That's true. Yeah, he's famous for his cat.
The Hemingway house in
Yeah.
During the last hurricane, somebody stayed to keep an eye on the cats in the forward. That was, yeah, and that was all media. Right?
That must have sucked.
Yeah, no one cared about the thousands.
Bunch of freaking out cats.
As long as someone who works in a museum, guys, those are jobs.
Alright, someone told me
That's pretty important.
part of your job is staying in the category 5 hurricanes. Look after cats. I'd be like,
Okay, I think it's working. So how can we try this? Let's try, did you submit? So go see your profile. Let's click on see your profile and it should show.
There are two CEOs.
Yeah, so one is the populate one is populate, one doesn't.
Yeah.
Let's do the next exercise.
So we have, yeah, we did have those. These are so popular.
Oh, pardon.
See your profile. Okay. No, it's not.
No, it's just loading. It's just taking a while to load.
That's a long
No,
time.
okay, go to the console. It's
For a
probably
fairly
gonna be
small
there. It's
amount
probably
of
gonna be
data.
there, so go to the console.
That's
Gotta be.
No, that thing's still loading. Something's up.
Okay, let me see. Can I drive this?
Yes, you may.
All right. Populate user.
That whole corner has been just sneezing this entire time.
Yeah, I'm going back to my, I don't know what you're talking about.
If console log.
I'm gonna go back to my corner over there. Y'all, like,
So let's see what we're missing here.
This is the fun corner. I just let you know.
because somebody's got Germany.
Mike.
Pedro. He's asking sneezes.
Pedro has cooties.
Well, you were talking.
I know. The lid likes me.
So it takes this data. Oh, so there's no error here, I think. So just comparing it to this one. Yeah, so this is the problem. Then doesn't take an error. It just gives us the data as the first argument. The error is not. See, Everyone see that? So that's what the problem was. Sometimes we can just go and take a look real quick and see what we're missing. So we just had that extra error thing that we didn't need there. I don't know why it isn't there, but here. So the reason why with the promise is it's different than with the callback function. With the callback function, you specifically take the error as an argument. When we're using promises, we use the dot catch instead. So we don't need the error specifically. With a callback function, the callback function has to handle the success and failure cases. With promises, it's a little different. You have one method to handle when there's success, then there's another method to handle when you need to catch it, when there's some type of failure. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so that's why it's a little different than some of our other examples here. So let's try restarting our server and running it again.
Let's try scraping. That way we're prepared for the homework.
Okay, we want to do the last exercise. We have 9 minutes, but yeah, do we want to review the?
Yeah, because technically today is day 3, so it's gonna be due Saturday.
This coming Saturday.
And then every homework is Saturday. Moving forward to Saturday. Okay.
It's gonna be Saturday, but try to stay current with it. I know you guys are at different places. Try to stay caught up because it's easy to get behind. A lot of you. I mean, we're far enough into the course where I'm not going to tell you guys don't get behind, but you know, don't get behind. I don't.
That was due Tuesday.
Let's do today.
Today?
Yeah.
No,
Is that for careers? Is the portfolio for career services though, or for us?
No, that's for career services.
No, it says technology. So for career services, it asks it from us 2 weeks before it's due in class here, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, the dates have never been correct. I apologize. The career services have. We need to fix our dates. I don't know how to do it. So, guys, we're going to go over the solved example with the last few minutes we have of class. We're going to go over the solved example. So, what does Axios do, Jonathan?
Oh, dude, that's I think it's like a express.
Axios is like Ajax, yeah.
Oh, so why is it different from request though?
It's in promise. I don't know why they're showing it.
Oh, it's like a promise-based version of request?
I don't know if they use Axios.
Or wait, but since this is on the back end, you don't have jQuery handy, do you?
We are using Cheerio. Cheerio is like jQuery on the back end, as we saw in some of. I don't know if you were there for that class.
Oh,
but yeah, it just allows us to parse our HTML structure as if we were using jQuery. So here is the code, guys. We're going to scrape. We have our scrape method similar to the other scrapers that we've seen. We're going to give it the URL to scrape, but this one uses promises instead of callback functions. You guys all know what promises are. Should be familiar to you guys by now. It's just a .then method that we're training. Yes, it is, Madison. She always tries to get me with that, but Madison is actually probably like the best developer in. You're probably the best developer in here, I think.
Can you go
The one with the most what?
Where is Axios?
Yeah, she is. Yeah. So that's what we were just asking. Let's look it up. That's a good question, Nelson. Axios. They're using this library here called Axios that none of us have heard of before. So this is like request. Remember, we're using a request to make the HTTP requests. This does the same thing, only it Axios NPM. I was going to look up Axios JS. Yeah. So sometimes.
Oh, there
You gotta click on it.
Oh, Vue. So I think this works with Vue, the Vue.js library. I saw something about Vue. okay, so make HTTP requests from the browser, make HTTP requests. So it does a similar thing to the request library, but it uses promises here. I guess they're slowly introducing us to promises without really telling us what they are. So.
Yay.
So we're doing this. So as you said, Sam, we're using Cheerio to work like jQuery on the back end, so we can use the jQuery-like syntax to parse our HTML document. We're figuring out what stuff we want to get out. We know that we want something out of each H2 tag that's inside of an article tag. So we're going to iterate over all of the H2s that are inside of article tags. Then we're going to make an empty object full of results, or for each result, rather. Then we're going to set the result.title to equal this, which refers to this H2 tag. Then we're going to go look for all of the A tags that are inside that H2 tag. We're going to get the text out of it. So that's going to be the title. Then the link, we get all of the children that are A tags, and then we get the attribute href. Again, many ways to skin a cat. There's a lot of different ways you could have done the same thing with jQuery. Any questions on this so far? Pretty much the same as the scraping stuff we did last Tuesday, right? Madison, you good with this? Any questions? Okay.
Don't click on it.
Laptop's down.
Yeah, laptop's down. No.
Like this when I want to focus.
Well, yeah, that's good too, I guess. Okay. So no questions on that. Madison, do you understand how that works though? Okay. So we're getting out the title. We're getting out basically the title of the link and then the href of the link, right? Okay, yeah, good. We'll go over that again. I bet other people have that same question too. Cheerio allows you to parse HTML on the back end similarly to the way we do it with jQuery. So in jQuery, if we have like a link, say we want to get all the links that are in H2 tags and then figure out what their like href is and what their link text is, right? We could do that with jQuery on the front end pretty easily. We would just go and get all of those links, then we would get their text and we would get their href attribute, right?
Use their tags.
Yeah, so what we do, first of all, we're using this thing called Axios. What Axios does is it makes the HTTP request to this site that we're scraping, right? So it goes to echojs.com and it pulls down the index.html file. So we have that HTML file. Then Cheerio allows us to parse it like using jQuery. So when we're using this $ here, it's actually Cheerio, but we're using it just like it were jQuery. It does all the same stuff that jQuery does. So we can just use that to get the stuff that we want out of the HTML file. In this case, we want all of the links, all of their hrefs and the link text. So that's all we're getting. We're going to this page, we're getting all of the links, and we're saving them to an array. Then once we've got all, we're actually going to make a new one. So this is an inefficient way to do it. The reason it's inefficient is because we're making one database create request for each item in the list. It would be more efficient to put all of the items together into an array and then put them all into the database as one. You only get to think about efficiency stuff like this when you've worked on production websites and when you think all the time about how to make stuff faster, stuff more efficient, and this type of stuff like pops out at you. But anyway, we're iterating over all of the H2 tags that are inside an article tag. We're getting out the relevant information. The relevant information is what? The link text and the link paths, right? The hrefs. Those two things. That's all we want from this page, right? Everyone see how that works? There's a list of links on this page. We're getting the link text and where the links are pointing to. Everyone clear on that part? So just to show you guys, if we go to echojs.com, so we have this list of links. Each one of these has link text, and then it has the actual URL that it's pointing to. So we're going to be saving both of these things to our database. For each one of these links, we're going to save the link text and the URL. And we can see the way this HTML is structured here. I know we're almost out of time, but you guys seem interested in this, so we might go a little longer. So we can see that each of these is inside of an article tag, and then inside of the article tag, there's an H2 tag. As a direct descendant of each A2 tag, there is an A tag, right? So we're saying, go for each article tag, go find the H2 tag inside it, then go find the A tag inside of that, then get the link text and get the URL. So that's what we're doing here. We're first making this request to echojs.com that pulls down the page. Then we parse the data using Cheerio, and we set Cheerio to equal this $sign. Then we're able to use this jQuery-like syntax to get all of the H2 tags that are inside an article tag. Then we're able to use more jQuery-like syntax to get all the children that match this CSS selector, which is A, right? And then we're going to use the text method to get out the text. Then we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to do the this children a dot attribute href. So they didn't do the very best way of coding that. We could have done this all in one thing, but it's fine. It's just throwaway jQuery code. Then the next thing that we're going to do for each of these is we're going to create a new record for our article schema that we've already created, right? Using the same stuff that we've been looking at all class for creating new models with our Mongoose. So we have a Mongoose model called article. We can see this, of course, by going to our models folder, and we can see that this is what the article schema looks like. It has a title that's going to be a string. It's going to have a link that's also going to be a string. And then it's going to have a note. This is going to be a foreign key to our note collection. You guys get how this is working? So what type of relationship does notes and articles have? Is it one-to-many, many-to-many, one-to-one? It is actually, in this case, it's going to be one-to-one. It would make sense if it were one-to-many, many notes to one link, but in this case, it's just a one-to-one. How can we tell this? Because this is not an array. In the other examples we've seen, we've had an array of foreign keys. This one is just one single foreign key is the value for this property. You guys all see how this works? So in the last example, just to show you guys, in the last example where we have the foreign keys, this was an array of objects of foreign keys. See that? Last example, we have these square brackets. This one we don't. So this means that it's a one-to-one relationship. And I was here. Article, note. So going back to what I was showing you guys with the scraper, we have our article schema already set up. Then we're just going to create a new record for each of these links, and that's pretty much it. Then it's just going to send this text scrape complete in the response. So this is the example that they're giving you. This is a pretty good starting point. I can see a few possible points of failure for this code. For example, what if one of these article H2 tags that we're iterating over doesn't have an A tag inside it? Then what will happen?
You draw nothing?
It will draw nothing, and then it won't be able to find these. So result.title or result.link will end up being undefined. So we'll get either at best undefined records in our database, or it might even throw an error and say, hey, I can't create the schema. I can't put it in the database because I can't get the right data. So what we would want to have is some kind of error checking there to say, hey, if there is no A tag inside the H2, then just skip this one and don't even do it. Also, as I say, this is inefficient because it does each of these database transactions individually. What you want to do when you're designing your applications is try to minimize database transactions. So if there's a way you can put all your data together into an array first, like if you have 50 links, you're going to make each one of these into a record, you could do that first and then put them all into the database as one transaction.
Yeah, that doesn't work if the amount of data is too big.
Yeah, if it's too big, your application could run out of memory, things like that could happen, but you'll still be, it's when you're designing your architecture, it's better to err on the side of using up more application memory than it is to err on the side of making more database transactions, because database transactions is really what will hurt you in terms of performance.
We covered a lot today. Any questions on this at all before you guys go?
So, Server.js, public folder models is all we need to deploy. We don't need to have the MVC structure of Express.
You need Express too. So Express has a very unstructured MVC. So there's all different types of folder structures, and in the examples we've seen different types of folder structures. So use the ones that make sense for you. All an Express app really needs is the app.js. You can choose to put your routes in a different folder or a different file. You can choose to put your models in a different folder or a different file, but it doesn't make you do that. Okay? Any other questions? Questions? John, how you feeling? Good? Yeah? Ready to go build a scraper? Not quite yet. Okay, other questions? Chris, you good? Okay. Nelson, good? Melvin, good? Everyone good?
Integrating handlebars, that's it.
Yeah, you can integrate handlebars, same as the other examples. I'll help you with it soon. Yeah, so that's the same as the other examples where we integrate handlebars. Nothing gets more confusing or nothing new to do with integrating handlebars. So we have the same already. Guys, give yourselves a round.